Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto namikaze anbu Captain Council bashing. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Detective Ethan Redfield and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Prologue. Please review. I don't own Naruto. Pity. Flashback. Human thoughts. Summons thoughts. Prologue. The memories of the past churned inside the young man's head. The blonde looked at his katana with deep, sad eyes, remembering those who he killed in service to the Hokage. The scabbard of the katana lay next to him on his right. Into those thoughts, images of his past also came. One particular memory came to the forefront of his mind. Flashback. A man with silver hair, a mask and his forehead protector covering his left eye sat on the railing. His eyes examined the three potential jonin with a lazy expression. The blonde kid, Naruto Uzumaki, fidgeted in his seat. To his right, Sakura, the beautiful cherry blossom of the hidden leaf, looked nervously at the darker-haired Uchiha. Her eyes drifted from Sasuke to her sensei. Furthest from Naruto, Sasuke Uchiha rested his elbows on his knees. His mind filled with dark thoughts. Kakashi spoke up, trying to break the ice. Alright everyone, why don't you introduce yourselves? Sakura spoke up next, introduce ourselves. What should we say? What you like, hate, your dreams, hobbies. Sakura was the first to speak up. Alright. Why don't you introduce yourself to us first? I'm Kakashi Haddock. I have no intention of telling you my likes or dislikes. Everyone perked up in surprise. As for my dream I have few hobbies. Sakura turned to Naruto and said, so all we found out was his name. Alright, now it's your turn. Let's start with you. Sakura turned back and said, I'm Sakura Haruno. The person I like is her head constantly turned to Sasuke. She then continued, and my hobby is my dream is, and? What do you hate? Naruto. Naruto felt like a £1,000,000 weight had crushed him. Kakashi sighed and said, alright. Next, Mr. Silent. Sasuke's eyes narrowed at the reference, my name's Sasuke Uchiha. I hate a lot of things and I don't particularly like anything. Using the word dream for what I desire is too weak a word. I have an ambition, and that is to find and kill the one who murdered my clan. Naruto looked nervously at Sasuke. Kakashi looked sadly at Sasuke, then looked at Naruto. Alright. Lastly, the one in orange. Alright. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like cup ramen. But I really like the ramen served at Ichiraku's that Iruka-sensei treats me to from time to time. The thing I don't like is the 3 minutes it takes to cook the cup ramen. My hobby is to eat and compare different cups of ramen. My dream. Naruto thought for a second. His usual happy-go-lucky smile drooped into a frown. My dream is to become a Hokage people can respect. Unlike a certain white-skinned team we have now. And flashback. For many years, he craved the position of Hokage and fought endlessly to secure the position through valor and honor. However, the Hokage was an undying creature, formed from countless sacrifices. Already, two had suffered fates worse than death to suit the madman's whims. But to understand, one must examine the history of Konohagakure. To start out with, it was time for Sarutobi, the third Hokage, to choose a successor. There were two choices, Minato Namikaze and Orochimaru. Both were fantastic choices for the position of Hokage. Minato was fantastic leader and was undoubtedly the best person for the position of Hokage. However, Orochimaru was also an admirable choice for the position. He was one of the three Sannin and a genius of the highest caliber. The Hokage had made his decision for the position of successor and would announce it shortly. However, a mission turned up at the last moment. Kusahina, Minato's wife, urged Minato to reject the mission, but he couldn't. She was already 5 months pregnant with Naruto at this time. Both Orochimaru and Minato were sent on the mission. However, only Orochimaru returned alive. Minato was slain in battle by an unknown ninja. So, Orochimaru became Hokage. 4 months later, the Sandaime died, sealing the Kyuubi no Kitsune into Naruto. Kusahina died in the Kyuubi's rampage. Thus, dark times settled over Konoha. Naruto suffered terribly at the hands of the villagers, but found comfort in his few friends he made, namely Iruka and his Anbu protectors. Naruto watched as the villagers were suffering under the leadership of Orochimaru. So, he decided to gain the position of Hokage. He would change things, make things better for them. His mind was so simple at the time. He would become a ninja to be proud of and become Orochimaru's successor. This was not meant to be, as Orochimaru was immortal. Naruto didn't know it. No one knew it. Citizens disappeared throughout the years. People suspected, but no proof could be brought against Orochimaru. Others started turning up dead. Naruto advanced through the ranks until he became an Anbu captain. Sasuke never did catch the one who killed his clan. Sakura died on a mission with Kakashi about 1 year ago when the two of them were ambushed by Suna ninja, specifically the Kazekage's children. Gaara, Temari and Kankuro. Kakashi didn't recover completely since then. However, the thing that sent Naruto over the edge was the fact that Sasuke disappeared, like so many of the other citizens. Naruto nearly tore Konoha apart trying to figure out where Sasuke went. The warrant was put out for Naruto's arrest because in the process he had assaulted several ninja trying to get the information. Naruto was located just outside Konoha in the Toad Mountain Inn. Kakashi had brought him there for some training as a jonin. Thus, we come to the present. Inside the cabin, his anbu equipment was scattered all over the place. Before him, there were several written reports in Orochimaru's handwriting describing the immortality ritual. Orochimaru was the one who killed the Uchiha clan. Other documents that he had read but not taken with him from the lab was checking up on the status of Itachi's body after Orochimaru had taken it over. Orochimaru had killed Shisui to keep his cover when he was Itachi because he had come too close to the truth. The rest of the clan was planning a coup to overthrow the snake, but Itachi killed the clan and took the fall for it. Naruto kicked the pile of papers over, causing them to scatter. He picked up the various parts of his body armor and began preparing for his final mission. No doubt Orochimaru would find and kill Naruto when he discovered the files he had were missing. Besides, Naruto no longer cared. He would try to kill Orochimaru for the crimes he committed against the Leaf Village first. As he strapped his right gauntlet on, he considered Kakashi's words, those who break the rules are called scum. But, those who don't take care of their friends are worse than scum. Naruto tightened his left gauntlet and began thinking of Haku, the boy who fought against him in Wave. He thought on his words, a person is able to become strong when they wish to protect someone they cherish. You will become strong. Naruto thought, it's my turn to protect something I love, my village. This village has seen its last day under Orochimaru's tyranny. Lastly, he strapped on his grey body armor and mask. He pulled over an orange trench coat and pulled on the hood. The orange-clad ninja walked through the door and turned to face the direction of the Leaf Village. Then, Naruto was gone. Kakashi looked at the monument and sighed. The black monument was there for those ninja who were killed in action. Quite a few names stood out on that monument. Sakura Haruno, Obito Uchiha, Minato Namikaze, Rin and Sarutobi. He sighed and said, geez, Sakura, I returned from my courier mission to Kumo, and Naruto has gone missing nin. After you left, Naruto and Sasuke just weren't the same. Sasuke closed up completely. Naruto's eyes became haunted and sorrowful. I kept telling him it wasn't their fault. No, it was mine. Had I been 1 second faster, I could have stopped that ninja from piercing your heart with his katana. I was always late. I and Rock Lee appeared behind Kakashi. It was the anniversary of Sakura's death. In a cosmic irony, Sakura ended up married to Lee after he changed some of his habits, namely his hair and habit of wearing the green latex workout suit. I put his hand on the silver-haired ninja and said, Kakashi. It has been a year since Sakura died. You need to come out of it. It is unyouthful, but I imagine you don't really want to hear that. Then come back because Sakura wouldn't want you to beat yourself up over this. Please, come out of retirement. Kakashi said disheartedly, no guy. It is my fault. I could have done more, but I didn't. I should have sensed a trap. I should have, but I didn't. I have no business leading other ninja into battle. It's about time for my retirement. Kakashi sighed. Suddenly, 2 anbu appeared in front of the 3 jonin. The apparent leader said, sirs, I have orders from the Hokage. Uzumaki Taichu has been detected on the northern wall. Several ninja are already moving to intercept him. We suspect he's aiming for the Hokage. Kakashi's eyes widened, then narrowed. Guy nodded and they all moved from the spot, except Kakashi. He looked over his shoulder at the monument and said, Sakura, please forgive me for what I may have to do. He disappeared after that short statement. Whatever his errant student did, he would probably have to stop it. An orange blur shot through the forest areas. Naruto was on the move and heading in the direction of the Hokage's tower at breakneck speed. He felt his sword to make sure it was in position because he would probably need it any second. Sure enough, 2 fellow anbu and a chunin landed in his path. Naruto sped by them as if they were nothing. All 3 fell to the ground, victim to a blunt sword impact. He formed the familiar cross-fingered hand sign and whispered, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 4 Narutos separated from the original and moved in various directions. The clones were there as distraction for any jounin who happened in his path. They would come to lead various portions of Konoha's ninja force on wild goose chases. One, however, was there for a special mission, to erase Orochimaru's face from the Hokage mountain. That one in particular would whip up the population into frenzy, especially those who remembered his pranking days. The real Naruto moved quietly, slowly and surely towards the Hokage's tower. His mission would be the most important of all. It took about 2 hours to make his way through the city and avoid the Hyuga's dangerous Byakugan. He somehow succeeded. Most of his clones were still leading the ninjas through the entire city. A couple were engaging in some serious combat with a few special jounin, namely Genma Shiranui, Aoba Yamashiro and Raito Namiyashi. The real Naruto, however, was unlucky to run into the Taijutsu masters Rock Lee and Might Guy. Lee spoke up first, saying, "Naruto-kun, please turn yourself in. I'd rather not have to kill you, my friend. Your fires of youth burned so brightly at one time." Naruto cocked his head behind his fox mask. "Lee, you were and still are one of my best friends. Please, step aside. I must kill that damn snake who resides in the Hokage's tower. What has happened to you, my once youthful friend?" Lee looked downtrodden as he said this, almost wishing that things had stayed the way they used to be. "What if I told you that the Hokage had been lying to you? What if he was the one behind all the disappearances that have been plaguing the village for so many years?" Lee looked confused and looked to Guy. Naruto took that moment to act, trying to take Lee out of the fight before Naruto had to remove Lee by force. In the flash of a moment, however, Guy blocked Naruto's blunted edge attack. "Lee, don't let down your guard. He was a friend once, a youthful student of Kakashi's, but now he's turned rogue and we must bring him down." Lee, surprised from the attack, jumped backwards. He looked to the ground and said, "I understand, Guy-sensei." His face came up with a determined look on his face. "Naruto-kun, I hope you can forgive me one day. Come." Lee's explosive speed made it appear that he teleported behind Naruto in the blink of an eye. Naruto brought his sword around, deflecting a double kick aimed at the upper part of his body. I joined in the onslaught. Naruto parried back and forth, deflecting blow after blow. Suddenly, Naruto felt a strong impact to his hip. He exploded into smoke, revealing a Kawarimi. In his mind, he realized, these two, if I keep fighting this way, they will overwhelm me in about 5 minutes. I have to stop this combined attack fast. The barrage became more dangerous as Guy began opening gates. The intense chakra pressure built up fast. However, Lee paused for a fraction of a second to watch Guy. Naruto took the chance and slammed the blunt side of the blade into Lee's neck, striking the pressure point perfectly. Lee dropped like a sack of potatoes. Guy redoubled the attack, using the incredible speed afforded by activating 6 celestial gates to batter Naruto into a corner. The attacks were missing, somehow, but Naruto couldn't handle the onslaught, not without hurting Guy at least. It was about the moment that Guy moved to perform the morning peacock special attack that Naruto thought, enough of this. "Forgive me, Guy-senpai." Naruto drew on his massive chakra well. He channeled his wind chakra into his newest attack. Naruto used a quick instant movement technique he developed after watching Guy's training session. He turned after landing right behind Guy, slashing the tendons in the older ninja's arms and legs. Guy yelled in pain and fell to the ground. I said, "That move, what was it?" Naruto put his blade on his shoulder and said, "Futon, K's Shunpo." "Guy-senpai, I was honored to be tutored by you for as short a time as I was. I developed that move in honor of your amazing speed. However, it does tend to wear on my muscles a bit as I don't have the muscle strength both you and your student have there. Orochimaru may end up killing me in the end, but I'll do what I have to do for the sake of our village." Suddenly, there was the sound of birds chirping in the distance. Naruto could only assume that it was Kakashi. His midsection suddenly exploded as his sensei's hand tore through Naruto's chest. Naruto coughed blood up and said, "Kakashi, you." Kakashi looked at his student with sad eyes. Suddenly, Naruto exploded into smoke, revealing a replaced wooden stump in Naruto's place. Kakashi sighed and said, "Wind flash step indeed. Ever since you asked me to not hold back in training, you've used that move to escape time and again. If it is combined with the replacement jutsu. Properly used, it can move a target much further than a regular replacement. Using your wind chakra, you create a small region in space that has nothing in it, no air, no atoms, nothing. Then, using the speed honed by Guy, you seemingly disappear and reappear behind the opponent in the flash of a second. But you already knew this, eh, Naruto?" Naruto dropped from a nearby scaffold. Kakashi could almost sense the smile on Naruto's face. "That's right, sensei. Kind of dangerous to use Chidori so early in the fight, almost unfair." Kakashi's eyes expressed some happiness. "That's right. Now what is my errant student doing out here in the middle of Konoha, especially after he was marked as a missing ninja?" "Kakashi-sensei, I once had the goal to become the Hokage." "Oh, does that mean your wishes have changed?" "Not at all, but the man currently in power has misused the position of Hokage. I've seen his lab, the reports he's written with his own hands, the experiments on the citizens of Konoha, everything. He's created a jutsu which gives him immortality at the cost of a single human life. His soul overtakes his target and becomes one with him or her. It happened with Itachi, and I suspect a similar fate overcame Sasuke." Kakashi looked at Naruto oddly. "Naruto, I'm sorry, but I have to take you in. Sakura's death has apparently weighed on your soul far worse than it has on mine. Perhaps you can be rehabilitated and can rejoin as a ninja after a couple years." Naruto's eyes turned vicious. "Kakashi-sensei, there can be no words now. All I see before me is a beaten old man who used to be the finest ninja in the world. I'd rather not have to do this, but I must for the sake of Konoha. Defend yourself." An hour later, Orochimaru looked out over the village. "With Naruto-kun gone, this village will no longer challenge me. He said, "Must you really come from the shadows, Kabuto?" "Ah, forgive me, Orochimaru-sama. I was finishing some research on the Nara. I figured it would be fitting if I came in such a manner." Kabuto's hand was on a rolled-up section of papers. Orochimaru chuckled, "Look at it, Kabuto. The village fools will no longer have any reason to stand in my way after Naruto's eliminated. They are all such fools, don't you think?" Kabuto chuckled and slowly approached Orochimaru. "It would certainly seem that way." Orochimaru continued on his rant, "Well, since that younger Uchiha brat was taken over, things have been progressing so nicely." Kabuto's hand accidentally twitched, crushing the papers under his fingers. Orochimaru turned and launched a hidden snake hand from his wrist at Kabuto. Kabuto ducked, pulled a sword out of nowhere and cut off the snake's head as it approached. Orochimaru chuckled, "It's a pity you had to turn traitor on your Hokage, Kabuto, or should I say, Naruto-kun." The henge exploded into smoke, revealing an orange-cloaked anbu with a fox mask. Orochimaru looked over the railing and said, "If you're not fighting there, then who is that down there with Kakashi? It's a clone, you know, my speciality, you damn snake." Naruto wasted no time as he moved swiftly towards the Hokage. In his left hand, a wind blade formed. Orochimaru was shocked at the speed and failed to move out of the way. The attack enveloped the snake Sannin and slammed him into the railing. As the damage cleared, the only thing remaining was some mud, which meant Naruto thought, "Oh, crap." Shuriken peppered the rooftop. Naruto turned to where the assault came from and deflected away all the kunai with his blade in his right hand. Suddenly, the roof floor turned to quicksand as Orochimaru shouted out, "Doten, Sabuwana no Jutsu, Sand Trap Jutsu." As soon as Naruto was trapped up to his waist, Orochimaru returned the floor to a solid stone by releasing the jutsu, and Naruto couldn't move his legs. Naruto fought to escape from the technique, but could not move. The snake suddenly rose from the floor, chuckling, "Cuckoo Naruto, you honestly think you could defeat me? Even if you are an Anbu captain, not even Itachi, an Uchiha genius, could kill me." Orochimaru moved in close to gloat. However, as soon as he was within range, Naruto formed a ram seal with his hands. He shouted, "Suiten, Bunshin Daibakuha." The clone detonated into water, spraying it in all directions. Orochimaru was covered in the watery substance. He tried to move, but discovered he couldn't. What is this?" Naruto suddenly appeared in front of Orochimaru with his black anbu sword extended. So much chakra was channeled into the blade that it became visible. Sharp wind chakra circled the blade, turning the black blade a bright light blue color. Naruto said, "Mizuum Nabara Bunshin, Syrup Capture Clone, extremely useful in the right situation. Now Orochimaru, you are caught in my trap. You will pay for killing Itachi, Sasuke, the Uchiha clan, and countless ninja in your pursuit of immortality." Orochimaru smirked and reached for his face. He pulled off his Orochimaru face, revealing Sasuke with his Sharingan activated, "Then kill me, but if you do, Sasuke dies as well." To Naruto, this was the worst thing Orochimaru could have done. Bright red chakra began circling Naruto and his blade. The two chakras on the blade merged, creating a deep purple color. Naruto's pupils became slanted and he said, "Sasuke is already dead. I've read your research and there is no hope of bringing back those souls you've overtaken. Enough words. Die Orochimaru." Naruto sprung at Orochimaru. Orochimaru's eyes shifted to a triple-bladed shuriken. At the same time, Naruto was stopped in his tracks by being attached to a tree. He looked behind him and realized immediately it was Yinjutsu. He attempted to get free, but it was already too late. Orochimaru's Dojutsu was sucking him into a miniature black hole that could not be seen. Naruto bit his lip in a last-ditch effort to escape the Jinjutsu and flee. The Jinjutsu faded, but Naruto sensed by the time his body could move, it would be too late. The nine-tailed chakra was absorbed fastest into the swirling black hole of chakra. Suddenly, a voice appeared that sent chills up his spine, "Naruto." It was Kakashi, and there was the sound of 1,000 birds chirping. However, that was the last thing he heard before the world went black. Kakashi sprung at Orochimaru. He knew the whole time he was fighting a clone of Naruto. He gave Naruto his chance to kill Orochimaru, but then he failed. Kakashi fled from the fight with the clone to where Naruto really was the moment he sensed his Mangekyo Sharingan's technique. Kakashi saw Naruto just moments before he was sucked into the Dojutsu technique, and Kakashi didn't even think about it. He slammed his lightning blade technique into Orochimaru's chest. Finally, to make sure Orochimaru stayed dead, he unleashed his newest assassination technique, Raiden, Hakureki Bakuha no Jutsu, Thunder Explosion technique. Lightning coursed through Orochimaru, boiling every cell in his body. In an instant, Orochimaru exploded with the sound of thunder ringing in the ears of everyone within a couple miles. He turned to where Naruto was just a second ago. However, all that remained was a small crater with trace amounts of the nine-tailed chakra. Kakashi fell to his knees and said quietly, "No, not again. Naruto, I failed you just like I failed everyone else." Over the next couple of weeks, Kakashi watched as the mood in the village, though dark because one of their finest died, protecting the village, grew lighter as the disappearances stopped. Apparently, Orochimaru really was behind the whole thing. However, the casualties due to the snake's crimes were tremendous. The other two Sannin were among those killed by Orochimaru. It also came to light that Minato Namikaze was murdered by the foe Hokage during their mission. So, the next one to take the mantle of Hokage was Kakashi Haddock, who ruled Konoha with kindness and mercy for many years. The older ninja decided to finally come out of retirement in a form of repentance by completing Naruto's dream. However, he still visited the monument to the fallen heroes every day. 3 more names were added to the stone: Itachi Uchiha, Sasuke Uchiha, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Thus, they were all heroes of Konoha for standing against one of the greatest threats to the peace. Orochimaru's face was also removed from the mountainside. Kakashi said, "If only I had been a second faster, Naruto." Chapter 2. A New World. First, I would like to thank my reviewers and for that matter, everyone who read my story. I hope you like my story. Otherwise, sorry for disappointing you all. Contrary to few beliefs, I don't own Naruto. A New World. Darkness surrounded the young man who was laying in an opening in a large forest. It was not clear if he was even alive at this time. One gutsy vulture landed nearby and began pecking at the human carcass. Suddenly, there was a flash of light reflecting off a black blade as the bird was beheaded rather gruesomely. The young man's head shot up as he looked around. He reached up and touched his face, or at least he would have if the mask in its place didn't prevent him from doing so. The young man rose to his feet and pulled off the fox mask. Naruto Uzumaki looked around, confused as to where he was. What the heck? Wasn't I just Headache, wasn't I just fighting the snake team a few minutes ago? If so, then why am I in this forest? Wait, why does this forest look so familiar? Suddenly, he sensed the smell of blood a couple hundred meters away. He was still unsure as to what was going on, but he would still follow his ninja way to the end, and that meant helping whoever that was out there. He moved to where he could sense the blood. After traveling several meters into the forest, Naruto landed near a clearing where he saw a familiar ninja stand up, pull out a shuriken, and throw it at another familiar ninja. The second ninja, a silver-haired man, looked awfully similar to Mizuki, a ninja teacher who broke the law and told Naruto about being Jinchuriki to the Kyuubi no Kitsune. The first looked like Iruka, another sensei of his who had died in one of Orochimaru's twisted experiments shortly after the graduation exam. Naruto watched as the Mizuki look-alike disappeared into the forest. Iruka look-alike also disappeared shortly afterwards. Naruto moved into the clearing and examined the blood left behind. Naruto's eyes widened. No way, it smells exactly like Iruka's blood. Over the years, Naruto's sense of smell had become more adept, and now he could even identify people by their smells. Naruto began thinking for a second, this is even weirder than before. Iruka-sensei disappeared shortly after the finals in the Chunin exam. His body turned up later outside the Forest of Death. I cried several times that week in mourning of my close friend. He tried to piece together what he was seeing and smelling, but came up with nothing. He suddenly felt like he was being watched and threw a kunai in the direction he sensed. The kunai flew through the clump of trees, but nothing came out. Naruto shrugged and then vanished from the spot, intent on capturing the lookalikes and finding out what was going on. In the Hokage tower, the Sandaime Hokage was watching with interest at the presence of a new ninja he had never seen before. It appeared that the ninja wore a leaf headband and had blonde hair. However, he had not gotten a good look at his face. The image quickly shifted towards Iruka and Mizuki, who were discussing Naruto after Iruka caught up to Mizuki. Mizuki looked at Iruka with disgust. "Naruto is just like me." Iruka looked confused and said, "Just like you? Anything is possible with that scroll. There's no way that Naruto, that monster fox, won't use its powers." "Yeah, you're right." The younger Naruto dropped head in anger, "So it's true. Iruka-sensei doesn't recognize me as me. If he was a monster fox. But Naruto is different. He's an excellent student that I recognize. He's hardworking, earnest, clumsy, and no one recognizes him. He knows the pain of others. He's not a monster fox. He's Naruto Uzumaki of the Hidden Leaf Village." Mizuki scoffed at Iruka, but Naruto just cried. "I'm going to start calling the anbu Naruto Namikaze Naruto to make things easier to understand." Suddenly, Namikaze appeared just a couple feet away in a clump of bushes. He was prepared to make a move at any moment. "Iruka, I said I would kill you later, but I take that back." He unstrapped a shuriken and began spinning it with his fingers. "Die." Namikaze stepped forward towards the edge of the brush, preparing to stop the attack. But the sight of what happened next stopped the anbu in his steps. Naruto leapt out from where he was hiding and slammed his knee into Mizuki's face. Iruka looked surprised. "Naruto." Mizuki slid on the dirt-filled ground several feet away. The shuriken flew out of hand and cut through the trees. The older ninja pulled himself up slowly and looked at the orange-wearing student. "Damn you, don't lay a finger on Iruka-sensei. I'll kill you if you do." Namikaze watched himself. It was unbelievable. He thought, this must be Jinjutsu Kai. He attempted to dispel whatever Jinjutsu he had to be caught in. Then, he bit his lip harder than when he faced Orochimaru. Blood streamed down his mouth into his lap. But it didn't make any difference. The scene remained before him. Mizuki shouted, "Talk well you can, brat. I'll beat a kid like you in a flash. Try, jerk. I'll do 1,000 times more damage back to you. Why don't you try it if you can, monster fox?" Naruto formed a familiar cross-hand sign and said, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." Smoke filled the entire forest. Suddenly, Namikaze had an idea. He hinged quickly and joined the Narutos. Narutos all over shouted that Mizuki should come at them. Namikaze joined in and said, "Yeah, come on Mizuki team. Come get me, idiot." They all rushed him en masse. After a few minutes, it was all over. Mizuki was totally and completely unconscious. Naruto dispelled all the clones and Namikaze had vanished into a brush nearby Mizuki. In a second, he would grab the traitor and make a break for it. He had plans for Mizuki. Sandaime watched for a few minutes longer before reporting that Naruto and Iruka would be returning soon to Konoha. However, his mind was troubled. He would have to order some anbu to begin looking for this unidentified ninja who helped Naruto and Iruka. Elsewhere, Namikaze had subtly switched out Mizuki for a shadow clone of his. The man dragged the traitor to a nearby clearing away from Iruka and Naruto. Meanwhile, 4 other clones had set up in a square formation. The moment Namikaze entered the clearing, all 4 activated the Sound Force jutsu Orochimaru had taught him personally. Even though he hated Orochimaru, the man was a genius in creating techniques. Namikaze dropped the traitorous Chunin and sat down. It was about an hour later that the traitor awoke in shock. He looked around, noting the 4 shadow clones and the 5th, who was probably the original. The man dressed in an orange cloak and fox mask was sharpening a kunai absent-mindedly. Mizuki turned to run when Namikaze suddenly spoke up, "Don't even think about it. If you touch that barrier, you will catch fire and burn to ashes in less than a second." Mizuki stopped and turned around. He was apparently too frightened of what might happen next. Namikaze suddenly stopped sharpening the kunai. He slowly put it in his pocket and turned his head to the Chunin traitor. Mizuki blinked. In the time he blinked, Namikaze was suddenly right next to him, slamming Mizuki's face first into the ground. He ground Mizuki's face into the dirt for 10 seconds and then threw him to the center of the barrier head first. A second later, the anbu was right next to him again and he looked furious. Namikaze said, "Okay, who the hell are you? What the hell is going on?" Mizuki backed away from Namikaze in fear and said, what are you talking about? Are you insane? I'm Mizuki, from the village Konohage." He was cut off from there with a punch from the side, sending him once again towards the barrier. He stopped several feet short. Namikaze continued, "Don't play dumb with me. I know exactly who you claim to be. You are Mizuki, a former teacher of Konohagakure until you attempted to betray and leave the village. You spent a year in prison, after which you escaped and attempted to flee Konoha again. I should know, because I killed you on that day. You are nothing but an impostor. Now, I will ask you again. Who the hell are you?" Mizuki's body begged him to flee. Whoever this anbu was, he was insane, and Mizuki would rather take his chances with Konoha's justice system over dying by this maniac's hand. Apparently, he forgot whatever session he might have to handle with Ibiki. Namikaze must have sensed Mizuki's thoughts of fleeing, because he moved swiftly, grabbed the traitor by the throat and picked him up. He slowly felt the life drain away as his left hand slowly but surely suffocated him to the point of near death. However, it was at that moment that several Konoha anbu moved into the clearing, attempting to get through the barrier and capture him. The barrier fell rapidly to prevent any further casualties on the part of Konoha. Namikaze himself fled into the forest while being chased by several anbu. The young anbu looked ahead and smirked. He blew through a narrow clearing where about 5 clones were hidden. After he was past, all 5 exploded, releasing an extremely sticky water substance into the air. The water clung to all the anbu and trapped them when they landed. Namikaze knew that it would take over an hour for them to escape and by then he would be long gone. 10 minutes later, he had vanished into the mass of Konoha's populace. 1 hour ago, Torture and Interrogation HQ, Konoha. Namikaze's clone appeared to awake in an interrogation chamber. In front of him, there stood a man in a black trench coat. Namikaze sighed as he remembered his old friend, Ibiki Marino. Ibiki smirked at the sight of who he would be interrogating, Mizuki who had turned traitor on Konoha. He would earn his paycheck tonight. Ibiki began subtly, "Let us begin." As soon as he said that, a powerful light illuminated the face of Mizuki. Namikaze didn't even blink. His smirk rose as he observed the interrogation room. The single light in front of him prevented him from seeing who was actually in the room. Ibiki moved inside and outside the light, appearing and disappearing like a phantom out of children's nightmares. He swore there was the sound of metal being sharpened outside, which was slightly disconcerting. There was even the sound of a sharp protrusion device he knew very well from his stint in the torture and interrogation department. Ibiki was good and Namikaze knew it. However, the ninja that rested in chains was merely a shadow clone. Ibiki continued, you will be charged with assault of a fellow ninja of Konoha, attempted murder of said ninja, and breaking an S-class law. Such a punishment is punishable with death, but if you work with us, we will shorten that sentence to 20 years hard labor. Namikaze relaxed and said, Ibiki, I'm disappointed in you. You haven't figured it out yet. Ibiki narrowed his eyes at the younger man. Then, his eyes went wide. Namikaze's smirk became a grin, now you're getting it. You can see through the disguise. Mizuki exploded into smoke, revealing an orange-clad anbu ninja with a fox mask. The anbu yawned and said, your skills are getting lax, Ibiki. The torture and interrogation's head smirked, so, instead of Mizuki, we have an anbu class unknown ninja in the company of some of the finest interrogators in the world. Care to explain why you've gotten so careless, ninja? Namikaze said, I'm disappointed again, Ibiki. Don't know when you're talking to a shadow clone. Ibiki jumped backwards, expecting a Bunshin Dabakuha clone detonation. Nothing happened. The clone said, if I wanted you dead, I would have killed you upon my arrival, Ibiki. Now, I have a question for you, senpai. Don't you recognize me? Ibiki looked the ninja over from head to foot. While he did that, he also pondered, I'm starting to lose control of the situation. Better to take back control before I lose it completely. Ibiki smirked and said, I don't need to know you. I'm sure our anbu are on the original's trail right now. There will be no more questions from you, as I'm the ones asking the questions. We'll find out just who you are in time. For now, what have you done with Mizuki, punk? Ibiki slammed his palms on the table to impose some psychological stress in the target. I can't say Ibiki, as he is not in my possession at the moment. I'm sure my counterpart is dealing with him right now as we speak. I might imagine the real me is interrogating him right now, trying to discover what's going on. But let's cut to the truth, he's not the real Mizuki. Ibiki was taken aback at this statement, what do you mean? Namikaze smirked again, I should know if he was the real Mizuki or not. He's been dead for over 10 years. Ibiki began masking his emotions, Mizuki died. When and how and why would you know if he was or wasn't the real Mizuki? Mizuki died when he attempted to flee from prison about 10 years ago. I should know because I killed him that day. Ibiki was unsure how to take this man. Clearly he is delusional, how about I dispel you and you can bring in Mizuki. I'm sure there will be mercy for your actions and the actions of impersonating an anbu captain. Namikaze's eyes went wide in fury, what the hell are you talking about? I am an anbu captain. I even worked under you for a time at the torture and interrogations building this building, you idiot. The anbu pulled off his mask, revealing what appeared to be the face of Minato Namikaze. Ibiki gasped and said, it can't be. Yondaime-sama. Naruto Namikaze looked confused at the man, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, you idiot. I'm not and have never been the Hokage, let alone that bastard snake. I'll kill him and free Konoha from his reign of terror, you better believe me. He dropped his head in shame at the sad fact. Ibiki was well he didn't know what to make of this. Naruto was sitting in his office, swearing to kill the Yondaime Hokage. It had to be a prank. Ibiki snapped his fingers. Two anbu appeared at his feet and said, bring me Naruto Uzumaki. The two ninja disappeared. Namikaze sighed in frustration and said, look you idiot of a commander, I am Naruto Uzumaki, anbu captain and right-hand man of the Yondaime Hokage. Believe me, that position is not one to be proud of. Next time I see that traitorous Hokage, I'll kill him. Ibiki's left eye twitched in irritation. He had never interrogated a more annoying brat. The confusion was starting to get to him, so he decided to correct Naruto, you realize that the Yondaime is dead. Namikaze perked up at this, are you serious? He almost looked happy or excited. Ibiki closed his eyes and sighed, Yondaime-sama died killing the Kyuubi. Namikaze reached for his stomach region. He said, that isn't true and you know it, Ibiki. The Sandaime died sealing the Kyuubi into me unfortunately. Suddenly, an old wise voice broke through the dark, oh, is that so? Then, I must be a ghost. Namikaze turned to where the shadows were deepest. The man slowly crept out from the shadows. The anbu captain tensed as he recognized the Hokage robes. However, the face and skin color was that of an old man with white hair. He chuckled slightly to himself and put a brown pipe in his mouth. Namikaze's eyes went wide, there's no way on earth, oh, of course. You're just a henge, wait no, there's no way that's true either. Ibiki would never stand for it. But how can this be? He attempted to pull himself out of the chair and kneel before one of the legendary Hokages of old, but realized quickly that he was still tied up. He said, very well, Ibiki. I'll answer whatever questions I can, but I may know only what you know right now. Namikaze knew Ibiki was Ibiki because he was a close friend in Namikaze's Konoha. Also, Genjutsu was ruled out because one could not use Genjutsu on a shadow clone. Ibiki's shoulders dropped a bit, showing his relief that he could begin at last, state your name, age and village affiliation. Naruto Uzumaki, age 21. I am an anbu captain of Konohagakure. Ibiki frowned but said, very well. For how long have you been an anbu captain? Namikaze thought about it for a second, then said, 5 years, until warrants for my arrest were issued by the living yondaime. Ibiki suddenly had an idea, alright. Who is the yondaime Hokage according to you? The yondaime Hokage is Orochimaru team. Ibiki paled at this declaration, and the sandaime's eyes went wide. Suddenly, the two anbu reappeared in the interrogation room flanking the young Naruto Uzumaki. Namikaze blinked at the appearance of Naruto and said, are you me? Naruto looked at the anbu captain and said, who is this stupid-looking guy? Namikaze's speculating eyes turned to outright glares, you brat. When they untie me, I'll show you stupid-looking. I bet you haven't even created a simple bunshin yet. Naruto returned the glare, just because I haven't created the simple bunshin doesn't mean I haven't created a bunshin yet. I just finished learning the shadow clone jutsu and using it on Mizuki. One day, I'll become Hokage and make you look up to me, you bastard. You. Become Hokage, oh, ho ho ho, don't make me laugh brat. If the Hokage wasn't here, I'd knock you out in a second. You'd have to be able to beat me before you can become Hokage. Naruto formed a familiar hand sign. The Hokage recognized it and said, Naruto don't do it never made it out in time. The Kiri no Jutsu, sexy jutsu. Two perverted screams escaped the soundproof walls of the torture and interrogation building. Ibiki looked at the Hokage as he lay on his back, twitching nose bleeding. He sighed, then looked to Namikaze. However, Namikaze wasn't there. There was some smoke that lingered from the accidental dispel when Namikaze's nose bled. So, what do you think? There is going to be humor in this story, but I have plans for this story. Next chapter. Troublesome Namikaze Naruto meets Anko. Chapter 3. Troublesome. First, I would like to thank my reviewers and for that matter, everyone who read my story. I hope you like my story. Otherwise, sorry for disappointing you all. Contrary to few beliefs, I don't own Naruto. Just a note, Namikaze Naruto is still Naruto Uzumaki. I just wrote that to make sure people knew who I'm talking about. People will still refer to Namikaze as Naruto when they talk to him. And I will refer to the younger Naruto as Naruto Uzumaki. Chapter 3. Troublesome. Anko Mitarashi, special jonin of Konohagakure and assistant of Ibiki Marino, was mad. No, scratch that, the woman was downright furious. She had been under assignment by the Hokage to bring in the strange anbu who had infiltrated the village from who knows where. She'd been searching for days now. The problem wasn't that she couldn't find the bastard. No, that was the easy part. She found him every day because one of his damn clones shadowed her at all times. Now, she was throwing several kunai at a target dummy to let off some steam as there was no real point capturing a clone. The condescending voice came from an overhead tree, Anko-san, I'm disappointed. Your kunai was off by 3 centimeters. If you miss in the slightest, your target may get another chance to return the favor. The hair on the back of her neck rose. Now, he was mocking her throwing technique. The Namikaze clone snickered at his old partner's fury. The original Namikaze was out gathering information on his current predicament and he thought Anko might be a fantastic source to get some information out of. So, he sent the first clone to find her. However, the clone was dispelled within seconds of finding its target. So, he sent another one which she did not dispel so readily. They verbally dueled it out. Flashback. Anko licked her kunai and said, I look forward to having a taste of your blood when we meet face to face. Namikaze sighed and put his hands behind his head, you know, there are better ways of asking for a date. Maybe we can get some sake together. I know a good bar in town. Sorry brat, but I'm not that interested in sharing a drink with someone I may have to kill. Policy and all. Does your policy include wearing such a skimpy outfit? You have absolutely no dignity, snake woman. Ah, you are just stunned by the sight of my awesome figure. Most men would beg for me to spend even one night with them. Yes, and most of these men probably have a death wish. She hesitated with a reply and Namikaze smirked. Her smile turned feral as she slashed the clone with her kunai. After the smoke cleared, she screamed in fury, loud enough to be heard several hundred meters away in a dark alley. A cat perked up and jumped out of the can. It exploded into smoke and there stood the real Namikaze. He thought, as fun as always Anko. I'll be seeing you around. Then flashback. Anko took aim at the clone. The clone sighed and said, look, this is starting to get tiresome. No matter how many of me you'll kill, I'll always send another. Besides, it's too much fun to stop doing this. Namikaze looked up towards the village. Anko sighed and said, you know, brat, you should really turn yourself into the Hokage. You haven't made a violent move towards me or any other Konoha shinobi. If you ask for asylum, you'll probably get it. Namikaze replied, when I'm good and ready, I'll ask for that asylum, but for now I need answers to certain questions. Are you finally ready to answer them? Or do you want to throw more kunai in my general direction? Anko sighed and said, fine, but under 2 conditions. First, I'll only answer questions that will not compromise the security of the village. Second, I need answers before you ask. Namikaze nodded and Anko began, who are you really? Ah, you've got to be kidding me. I've already answered that. I'm Naruto Uzumaki woman. Hein, Naruto, tell me why there are two Narutos in the village. Namikaze looked speculative, well I'm not sure. It seems that I might have come from an alternate universe world or something like that. In mine, the main difference occurred when Orochimaru became the fourth Hokage. The lights in the Namikaze suddenly went on, wait, if Orochimaru isn't Hokage, then where is he now? I'm not sure I believe that, Anko replied. Namikaze didn't see it, but her eyes narrowed just a bit. She turned on the spot and threw 3 shuriken at extremely high velocities. The 3 drilled through the neck region of the target, cutting the dummy's head off. Believe what you want. Ooh oh, much better, klutz. Looks like you're finally figuring out how to really throw those babies. Anko growled, don't test me. Next time it will be your head. Do you have any more questions, or can I ask mine? Anko said, if you are from another Konoha, then what am I like there? I'd have to say exactly the same as you. Except loyal to the snake bastard. Hey. Anko jumped into the tree and tried to shove him out, hoping for him to crush his skull in an accidental death. However, Namikaze was slightly faster. He leapt backwards towards another tree. His feet were ready with focus chakra as he attached himself to the trunk. Are you out of your mind? Geez, you're not like her. And besides, you were still completely loyal to Konoha. Think about it, would you have hated Orochimaru if he didn't leave the village? Anko jerked her head to the side, gee. He betrayed the village and me. I'm going to kill him one day. Namikaze said, sure. Would you like help? She was quiet for a second and then said, I don't need help from ninja I hardly even know. Get lost brat. No, I don't think so. Namikaze leapt forward from the trunk and landed on the tree. Anko had already jumped to ground and started collecting her kunai and shuriken. Namikaze crouched on the branch and said, well, I think it's my turn to ask questions. He was cut off as a kunai slammed into the back of his head. The last thing the clone thought as it dispelled was, she's more skilled than my Anko. Elsewhere, a child and his mother were walking along together when suddenly they both stopped. They looked into each other's eye with a wary look and then continued on. As soon as they came across an empty alleyway, the two walked into it and burst into smoke. Suddenly, only one stood wearing an orange shirt, a red coat and a Konoha forehead protector that he bought in the village. On his back, his black short sword rested, attached to his coat. He said, damn that Anko. I need those answers. His hands went into the familiar cross-shaped hand sign when his danger senses went ballistic. He jumped forward, attaching his feet to the wall and running like the wind up to the top. He sprung over it and continued running. There was no change in air currents, no out-of-place smells or sounds, and no massive changes in chakra in the nearby vicinity, but he could still sense his life was in supreme danger if he didn't move and move fast. He flipped backwards over a mid-size building right into a larger building. He climbed to the top of the roof and backflipped, hoping to throw off whoever or whatever he was running from. Suddenly, his danger senses screamed. The kunai slid out of his sleeve. He threw it at a building 20 feet into the distance. It slammed into it 1 second later. Namikaze's body suddenly stopped responding. He thought, I know this jutsu. His eyes turned to his backside, which confirmed his theory. Suddenly, a wire attached to a wrist guard on one end and tied to the kunai on the other, reeled him rapidly towards the building. He broke free from the jutsu and dove into another alleyway. He landed softly and said, alright, come out. I know you can hear me, Shikaku Nara. Nothing seemed to happen. Then a dark-haired man sporting several serious-looking gash scars on his face grew out of the shadows. Looks like it's a troublesome opponent. My shadow can only extend so far, so you broke the connection by pulling yourself to a faraway building. Not bad brat. But I'm still much more skilled than you are. Namikaze frowned. Shikaku Nara, at least in his own world, was an S-class ninja. He was known for his signature move, which apparently still applied in this universe. As long as one of his opponents were in the shadows and he was within the same shadow, he could teleport anywhere within the shadow region. He used it during the Sunakusa Konoha War to wipe out several of the enemies, very similar to Konoha's yellow flash technique, but much slower. It was one of the most well-kept Nara secrets. To show it to Namikaze only meant one thing, Shikaku was seeking his death. Shikaku began things off. The Nara shadow extended towards the Anbu captain at a remarkable pace. Namikaze, however, was faster. He leapt backward several times, first to the back of the alleyway, then up the wall. However, the air pressure changed, pressing downwards. It signified that something really big was above him. Naruto jumped to the wall of the alleyway and began running on its side. A massive crash could be heard where he was just a few milliseconds ago. Suddenly, another shadow tendril extended from the original shadow. Namikaze thought, Shikaku Nara, S-class ninja indeed. His specialty, maneuver his opponents right into a place where he can be killed. The only way to defeat him is do something he wouldn't expect me to do. The tendril shot along the wall, poised to capture the blonde-haired son of the Yondaime Hokage. Namikaze formed a quick cross-shaped hand sign, and 2 shadow clones formed in front of and to his side. The tendrils attached to the clone's shadows and namikaze sped by them. Nara growled a bit. The troublesome Anbu had escaped his first trap. However, there were still other traps along the way. He thought, so he knew I was maneuvering him to the top of the building, right in line of sight of Inoichi. This brat is good. He formed a different hand sign than the one he used for Kajime no Jutsu, shadow imitation jutsu. From the orange Anbu's own shadow, a black shadow spike skewered both shadow clones. They burst into smoke. Chaoza Akamichi emerged from the deep crater that formed in the alley. His meat tank had missed, but Shikaku knew that would probably happen. The Nara clan leader disappeared in pursuit of the blonde-haired shinobi. Elsewhere, Namikaze was sprinting in the twilight morning hours, seeking to get away. He fled alongside the walls of the houses, carefully avoiding all windows and the rooftops. Anbu constantly patrolled them, so he had to stick to the shadows. The thing is, Shikaku is in virtually every shadow during the morning hours. If Namikaze could last for a couple hours or make it to an open field, he might have a chance. Behind Namikaze, there was a tendril of black shadows chasing him. Suddenly, it sprang forward and pierced the ninja. Namikaze transformed into a log, revealing a Kawarimi replacement. The blonde-haired shinobi landed on the roof. He said, "Screw it, I'm going to have to take a chance." The black tendril followed Namikaze. He smirked and activated a Taiju Cage Bunshin. About 10 Namikazes fled in all directions. 2 threw wire-attached kunai, hoping to flee to another building. However, Shikaku activated another special jutsu of his. The tendril of black rose from the ground like a tree, and then it spiked in 10 directions. All the clones exploded into smoke immediately upon being pierced, except one. Shikaku grew out of the shadow tendril and said, you could have just turned yourself into the Hokage. Why did you have to be so troublesome about it?" Namikaze coughed and said, "Because, I have to find some answers before I can go back. However, I'll clue you into something." Shikaku said, "No need. I already know you're not really Naruto." The final clone exploded into smoke and the chase continued. He sped after another Namikaze who ran down the streets. However, several meters in the distance, a kunai still attached to the side of the building exploded, revealing the real Namikaze. He sighed and said, "That was difficult. I thought my goose was cooked." He dropped from the building's side and landed silently in the middle of a busy street. In less than a second, he was disguised as just another passing merchant who entered and exited the village every day. Minutes later, the city became crowded. He walked to the nearest hotel and ordered a room for the night. It was dusk when Shikaku Nara gave up chasing down Namikaze. He grunted as he sat down at the bar. An Namikaze clone sat down next to him. It shouted in a cheery voice, "Hey old man, get a bottle of your finest sake for me and my friend here." Namikaze slammed his hand on the older ninja's shoulder. Shikaku said, "Troublesome. I hope you wouldn't mind me holding the sake, as I don't want you getting any ideas while I drink." The young Anbu shrugged and Nara grabbed the bottle and poured a couple small bowl cups of sake. He gulped down the first 2 and then set down the bottle. A bit of color appeared on Shikaku's cheeks. He said, "Damn, that's good stuff. Tell me kid. Do you play shogi?" Namikaze poured himself a smaller cup of the alcoholic beverage. He wanted to save as much sake as possible. "Yeah," he said, "I played with Shikamaru back home." Truly, he was one of the most skilled opponents in the village. He took a sip of the alcohol. It burned as it slid its way down his throat. "On occasion, I even played you. The you from the other world was several times better than Shikamaru." It was scary. Shikaku's mouth twitched into a faint smile. Did Shikamaru become a great ninja in your world?" Namikaze gave the big teethy grin that Shikaku had only seen on the younger Naruto. For a second, Shikaku could almost believe that this was Naruto from another world. Namikaze said, "Shikamaru turned into an amazing ninja." He and Asuma were he stopped when Asuma's name came to mind for a second. The younger ninja's smile dropped a bit and turned into a sad sort of grin. He poured a larger bowl of sake and gulped it all down. He remembered Asuma, who was killed by Haiden when protecting Shikamaru and the rest of his team. The clone said, those two were known as the dual twin blades of Konoha. Shikamaru captured his opponents using unbreakable strategy and his shadow jutsus. Asuma was the follow-up, usually killing the target or holding off the enemy's companions. They both owned trench knives. Shikamaru's were a gift from Asuma, who had another set made. He poured another bowl and gulped it down again. However, an S-class ninja by the name of Haiden murdered Asuma. Namikaze's vision started blurring as the sake began taking effect. But Shikamaru obliterated Haiden the next time they met. Shikaku took another long sip of sake. Namikaze followed sweet and said, "Then Binjo books joined. Shika was renamed the twin blade of Konoha until he vanished due to your sensei." He paused for a long time as he pointed at his surprised Anko. Her hand was at his throat with a kunai faster than the eye could blink. It wasn't held tight against his throat, mainly because she suspected it was another clone of Namikaze and wanted to say something to him. "Listen here, you blonde-haired bastard, I reject everything my sensei ever did. If I see him again, I will kill him. On another note, give yourself up. The Hokage here is pretty lenient. Namikaze seemed to sober up with a knife at his throat. He said, hopefully, he's more merciful than you. You'd kill first and ask questions as they bleed dry. Anko smirked and rose to the bait, yes. I hope to get to do that when we meet firsthand. It might satisfy some of my deeper longings in life. Namikaze raised his eyebrow, and that would be your desire to get a date. Anko's head snapped back towards the vocal brat. She saturated the bar with a suffocating amount of killer intent, no. My desire to rid the world of obnoxious brats, even those of Anbu class. The clone shrugged and said, well, at least you know I both outrank and outclass you, my dear drunken snake. You should talk about being drunk, brat. That's some of the strongest sake I've ever smelled. I'd even bet you couldn't stand right now. Of course I can stand. Anko picked up the clone off the stool and set him on his feet. The moment she let go, he crumbled like a house of cards and slammed into the ground. Shikaku chuckled and took another drink. Anko smirked at the crumpled mess of a man in front of her. Namikaze twisted his head to face Anko and muttered, shut up team. She bent over into his face and said, you want me to introduce you to a couple friends of mine. I'd gladly do it after all the grief you've given me over the last few days. Two snakes slithered out of her trench coat sleeves towards the slightly younger ninja. They hissed and encircled the Namikaze. He smirked and said, you forget two very important things, my dear Anko. First, I am merely a clone and killing me would be pointless. I would just send another, like I have been all week. Anko's smile turned cute. Namikaze shivered visibly because when she looked sweet, cute or innocent, it would only cause him or someone nearby serious pain. Anko replied, but the shadow clone sends back all of the memories of what just happened. If I caused you excruciating pain, the real you would remember the pain. I would think that's enough, don't you? Anyway, what's the second detail? She was cut off as Namikaze's hand, now holding a wet senbon needle, pierced her leg. She reached down to pull out the senbon, but her hand suddenly stopped and started twitching uncontrollably. Namikaze smirked and said, second, I am a former Anbu captain of Konoha. That senbon was saturated in a special concoction of a close friend of mine. The image of an older Ino Yamanaka passed in front of his eyes. He continued, first, your mind stops sending signals to your hands or feet within 2 seconds of administration. For your hand to twitch at all is nothing short of impressive. The two snakes encircling and hissing at Namikaze exploded into smoke. He said, second, all active chakra usage is cut off. Finally, your body shuts down and you go to sleep for 8 hours or so. As he said this, Anko fell over, landing on top of Namikaze. Shikaku grunted and muttered something that sounded an awful lot like troublesome. Namikaze smirked, then realized several people had gathered and were watching the whole spectacle. The bartender was smirking while pouring some whiskey for another ninja. He started blushing because Anko had landed in a rather awkward position on top. He shouted, would someone please get this psycho off me? Elsewhere, the real Namikaze was slowly gathering information around town. He figured out that, at least in this world, there were several major differences. Chief among them being Orochimaru was an S-class missing ninja. This exact date coincided with the night before the team's placements. He sighed as he remembered his teammates. There was Sakura Haruno, his childhood crush. Perhaps things would be different this time around and Sakura would fall for the younger him. There was also Sasuke, who was seeking his family's killer, Orochimaru. Of course, Sasuke didn't know Itachi had become Orochimaru's new body. He would seek out Sasuke to train at a later time. For now, while he was still fleeing Konoha Shinobi, it wouldn't be possible. Next, he would need to deal with the Suna and Kusa invasions of Konoha during his first Chunin exam. There were other major village battles, but this was the first and most devastating. They had lost several Konoha ninja to repel the attacks of two Kages and their trump, Gaara. Taking out Kusa would be easy. All he had to do was eliminate the infiltration Kusa team, that creepy female jonin who was the advanced scout. In his original timeline, she took Namikaze's scroll and left Team 7 all to die. If it wasn't for Kabuto, he shivered at Orochimaru's right-hand man, the three of them might have died. Sasuke fought and killed her in the finals before taking on Gaara. Finally, he needed to out Akatsuki before things got way out of hand. He remembered Haiden and Kakuzo's assassination of Asuma and Ino. Asuma died due to Haiden's Jashin technique and Ino had her heart ripped out by Kakuzo. It was a horrible day for Shikamaru. He lost one of his best friends and his mentor brother figure. Pain came close to wiping out Konoha. If it hadn't been for Naruto's arrival due to the messenger frog arriving when it did, Pain would have utterly destroyed the city in one attack. It would take planning, but he had plenty of time and nowhere to go. He could not go back to his Konoha. They'd kill him upon his arrival. He suddenly stopped in the middle of the street. He went down into a dark alley where no one would see him and started crying, the first time in years. He cried for his home, which he would never see again. Chapter 4. Meeting old friends. First, I would like to thank my reviewers and for that matter, everyone who read my story. I hope you like my story. Otherwise, sorry for disappointing you all. Contrary to few beliefs, I don't own Naruto. Chapter 4. Meeting old friends. Anko woke from her bed with a start. The last thing she remembered was the brat from the other world. Anko vowed to show Namikaze why she was Ibiki's assistant in the torture and interrogation department. Today was the day she would check the hotels to see if someone had checked in recently under an assumed name. However, the first thing she would do was go for dango, her favorite food and a meal worthy of God himself. Namikaze leapt over the rooftops, disguised as Izumo Kamizuki, a close jonin friend of his. He wanted to watch the jonin teams being formed. Mainly, it was nostalgic and it only happens once in a person's life. He would be lucky to see himself a second time. He landed right at the entrance to the academy doors. There was a lot of noise coming from the inside. The couple instructors were coming and going, talking amongst themselves and enjoying their lives. Namikaze gave a sad smile at the halcyon days of his life when there was no Akatsuki or Orochimaru for that matter to spoil your day with the threat of impending destruction from the outsider in. The couple Chunin waved at Namikaze and he waved back. He slowly walked through the doorway and made his way to the old classroom. Sure enough, the classroom of his past was still there. However, there was no one inside. Namikaze thought, am I early? No, it was roughly this time that I met with my team. Besides, Team 7 would still be present. Kakashi was always late always. Wait, let's try a different room. He checked every classroom until he came to the right one. He walked inside, where he saw some very familiar faces. First among them was Iruka Yamino. He walked to the front of the classroom and said, yo, Iruka, mind if I sit in on this class? Iruka shook his head and said, no, not at all. Namikaze pulled up a chair and sat just behind Iruka. There, he scanned the faces of his former classmates. Some, he recognized. Others he didn't. Iruka began, starting with the Team 1. He only paid attention to those whose name he recognized and the leaders of each group. Team 1 leader. Inoichi Yamanaka Team 2 leader. Genma Shiranumi Team 3 leader. Raido Namiyashi Team 4 leader. Tsume Inuzuka. Namikaze flinched at her name in particular. She scared him worse than Anko did. Team 5 leader. Aoba Yamashiro Team 6 leader. Choza Akamichi. None of the names up to this point, besides the team leaders, stood out. Though he did hear a Sarutobi mentioned and maybe in Yamino, probably related to Iruka somehow. Team 7. Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno, Sasuke Uchiha Team 7 leader. Kakashi Haddock. Namikaze watched in amusement at his younger self's antics, going from ecstatic to depressed in a matter of seconds. Team 8. Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburam, Kiba Inuzuka Team 8 leader. Kurana Yuhi. Namikaze noted the presence of an Inuzuka, Kiba was his name, right. Then where is Rin Inuzuka? In his world, there was no Kiba, but there was a Rin Inuzuka. They were good friends for a while. Then, they grew apart after Hinata and Namikaze started dating. There was already a Team 9, and they had yet to make Chunin, so Iruka jumped right to Team 10. Team 10. Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, Chogi Akamichi Team 10 leader. Asuma Sarutobi. Namikaze took special interest in Asuma's team. Ino looked like she was about to break down after being assigned the same team as Shikamaru and Chogi. He chuckled at that. Perhaps he could help things out a bit in her team as well. After all, Ino did introduce him to the world of poisoned weapons in his world. Perhaps he could return the favor in this one. Suddenly, the 11-year-old Naruto lost control of his mouth. Iruka-sensei. Why is a top-notch ninja like me in a group with this bastard? Sakura turned his head to glare at the loud-mouthed ninja. She didn't want anyone ruining her chances to being on Sasuke's team. Namikaze's sweat dropped and thought, well, there goes his chances of marrying Sakura. Iruka just looked slightly annoyed and said patiently, Sasuke graduated with the highest scores. And you, Naruto, had the lowest scores. As Iruka ended his brief lecture, a kunai flew out from the corner of the room. It grazed the side of Naruto's cheek and slammed into the desk behind him. Naruto flinched and grabbed at the now bloody cheek. The girl behind Naruto had already used a kawarimi to replace herself with a wooden post. Everyone now turned to face Izumi Namikaze. He chuckled and said, please forgive me. My hand slipped. Naruto raised his fist at the older ninja and shouted, what are you talking about? That was no slip, team. Let's go, right now. Namikaze's voice suddenly appeared in Naruto's ear. The loudmouth ninjas are usually the first to die on the field of battle. They draw the most attention, and that can your life. Ninjas are to be stealthy. Remember that, brat. Naruto stood absolutely still. Namikaze was releasing a decent amount of killer intent. Naruto nodded, with a bead of sweat rolling down his forehead. Namikaze hesitated for a second and then whispered, teamwork is the key. Naruto's eyes widened at the odd random statement. Namikaze stopped projecting killer intent and said in a speaking tone, think about what I said. Once again, Naruto nodded, but slowly this time. Haruka said, Izumi, stop trying to scare Naruto. Honestly, have you been spending too much time around Anko lately? Namikaze gave a rueful grin as he walked back to his position. He said, yeah, I probably have. Should stop that, hazardous to my health and all. Haruka coughed into his hand and said, anyway, your Jounin senseis will be here after lunch to meet you. Good luck, all of you. Meanwhile in the Hokage's chamber, all the Jounin were muttering amongst themselves. Sarutobi said, what is Izumi doing there? Wasn't he supposed to be on a mission to Kumo, escorting a daimyo with Katetsu? Kakashi said with disinterest, then who's that in the room? Sarutobi gave the signal, sending all ninja in the tower after the intruder. Namikaze shivered uncontrollably. Haruka looked across the table at the hinged ninja. The teacher swallowed some curry he was eating and said, hey, you alright? Namikaze looked around, then relaxed, yeah, I just got a really nasty feeling right now, like someone was coming to kill me. He shrugged and thought, probably Anko. After all, I shiver just before she's about to kill my clones, so why not now? Maybe she just woke up. Suddenly, Ebisu appeared out of nowhere. He was wearing a black outfit he remembered from the time Namikaze Naruto knocked him out using his harem no jutsu. He had run into the ninja, literally, shortly before the team placements. Ebisu had insulted him and claimed he would be nothing more than a delinquent. Then, Namikaze tricked Ebisu with his harem no jutsu. In his musings, Namikaze had the memory of the Chunin exams emerge. To this day, he never had a chance to apologize to him for his attitude that day. Ebisu did train him well in the basics and even began his element training by showing him the leaf-cutting exercise. Using that, he managed to cut through Niji's ultimate defense technique, Kaiten. Unfortunately, Ebisu was killed in the Sunakusa Konoha War. 1. Suddenly, Namikaze realized he was spacing out. He gave a simple wave at the teacher to which Ebisu nodded back but didn't say anything. Ebisu almost seemed in shock. Namikaze said, Ebisu, what's wrong? You're quieter than your usual self. Ebisu sat down at the table, adjusted his shades and said, nothing, I just had a run-in with the Uzumaki brat a couple days ago. Namikaze saw confusion in the man's eyes. He smirked and said, he's an odd one, that's for sure. Wonder what would happen if he passed whatever Jounin's test he got. Haruka joined the conversation, say, don't you have the Hokage's grandson as your apprentice, Konohamaru, right? At this, Namikaze felt surprise. He never heard about Konohamaru, at least in his world. 2. Ebisu replied, the honorable grandson is doing well. I think he finally understands what it means to be a ninja. Namikaze suddenly felt several high-level chakra signatures approaching. The ninja figured it might be a good idea to split right now. It might have been the Jounins coming to get their students, or it might be an Anbu team after his hinged hide. However, a new chakra signature confirmed they were after him. Kakashi Haddock was on his way. No matter what universe, Kakashi Haddock was always late. Namikaze smiled pleasantly and said, well guys, I've got to go and meet with the Hokage about something. See ya. They waved as he exited in a rapid manner. The Anbu captain, however, immediately began making plans. Kakashi was coming from the north and he was probably the worst ninja to run into. So, he made his way to the south exit of the academy. He slid open that door and his right eye started twitching immediately. Shikaku Nara, Asuma Sarutobi, Kurenai Yuhi, and Inoichi Yamanaka were all standing in wait for Namikaze. Asuma already had his trench knives out. Namikaze had to get away before Kakashi arrived. That was a given. However, he did not want to seriously hurt any Konoha ninja, especially today of all days. So, he made his move using a single hand sign, Fuiten, Kei's Shunpo no Jutsu. Asuma and the rest blinked. In that instant, Izumo was replaced with a wooden post as he escaped the confinement of the elite ninjas. Asuma and Kurenai were quickest to respond. They both used Shunshin no Jutsu to keep pace with Namikaze. Inoichi made to follow, but Shikaku stopped him. He wanted them to check and make sure that all the students were okay, and so were the teachers. Meanwhile, Namikaze followed up his Kei's Shunpo with another one, right out of the city area into a forest region. He hoped it would lose the two ninjas on his trail, but to no avail. Asuma and Kurenai were always fast on the uptake. They kept on following him, never getting too far away to make an escape. Suddenly, his worst fears became realized. Kakashi was extremely close and there would probably be no shaking him. Several kunai hurled themselves at Namikaze. He landed on a branch and formed a new set of hand signs, Fuiten, Gufyu Garandu no Jutsu. Wind Art, Typhoon Void Technique. He released chakra from every pore on his body, creating a protective void around him. The kunai stopped in the middle of the air, then dropped like weights without something holding them up. Kakashi landed on a branch in front of him. Kurenai to the left behind and Asuma to the right. All three pulled out bladed weapons, Kakashi and Kurenai holding kunai and Asuma with his trench knives already out. Namikaze's henge finally dispelled. The Gufyu Garandu technique vanished as well. Namikaze ground his teeth together, sighed and said, looks like something troublesome has come my way, to quote Shikaku Nara. Asuma swung his blade at Namikaze. The Anbu captain swiftly drew his short sword and swung in a vertical arc. Nothing seemed to happen for a couple seconds, then two explosions could be heard in the distance as the severed wind technique cut deep gashes into separate trees. Namikaze said, heh, I never knew you could send wind scythes at me with those trench knives of yours. Furthermore, you did it without even causing a single visible vibration in the air. Ah, it brings back memories of times long gone, Asuma-senpai. Asuma said, how were you able to deflect that wind scythe? Namikaze held his sword to his face and channeled enough chakra to it. The black blade suddenly glowed blue. Asuma smirked and said, I see. That blade is made out of the same material these blades are. This could be a problem at least if the rest of you guys weren't here. Kurenai nodded and began forming several hand signs. Meanwhile Kakashi leapt at Namikaze. Namikaze's blade struck Kakashi's kunai and severed it in two. Kakashi jumped backwards to avoid the attack and landed on another nearby branch. Namikaze landed only to see multiple tree branches seemingly grow out of the trunks of the trees. They impaled Namikaze in the arms and legs and quickly wrapped around him. Asuma sighed and thought, about time, Kurenai. Namikaze watched in surprise as more tree branches began growing out of the branch and encircling the Anbu captain. Namikaze remembered the technique from when he had to face Kurenai in a practice match for Anbu. The technique was called Meijin. Bunka Akumu no Jutsu, Demonic Illusion. Branch Nightmare Jutsu. He smirked and began speaking, this jutsu it has been a while since I faced it. First, branches grow out of the nearest surface, impaling the victim's arms and legs, causing unimaginable pain to the target. Thus, it renders the target immovable. Then, it surrounds the victim in an illusion of tree branches and crushing them all together, suffocating the target until he's unconscious. Furthermore, it is nearly impossible to break free from, as the target suffers unimaginable pain and can't form hand signs to channel chakra. However, Kakashi's and Asuma's eyes went wide and dove at Namikaze, planning on ending whatever threat there was to Konoha in the form of the Anbu. However, Namikaze swung the hand which held the blade, deflecting Asuma's attack, and kicked Kakashi backwards. He continued, one can defeat this jutsu by inflicting equivalent pain to your own body. His left hand hung limply at his side and his lip was bleeding. Kakashi said, so, you bit your lip to allow your body a second to move. You used that second to break your own left hand with some wind chakra. However, now you are down to one hand. Namikaze just smirked at Kakashi, not quite. Visible red chakra swirled around the hand and absorbed into it. Namikaze snapped his wrist back into place and allowed Kyuubi's chakra to heal his hand rapidly. He closed his eyes. Suddenly, Namikaze found himself inside the dark sewer that was his mind. There was no water, as his body was not in danger. Before him, there stood a massive gate. He said, I'm going to need your help this time. The red-slitted eyes opened, along with an evil smile full of white teeth. The Kyuubi rested behind the sealed gate. It said, Naruto, why should I bother to lend you my chakra? You look to be handling things just fine on your own right now. Last time we talked, it was when you were about to die when facing Orochimaru on top of the tower. Namikaze glared at the demon. He said, that time, I didn't want you running loose in Konoha. The amount of chakra I would have needed to crush Orochimaru would have been more than enough for you to take control of my body and destroy Konoha. And I find that unacceptable. I just need a little bit for this. The slitted eyes glared at Namikaze. He growled and said, you can't hold me back forever. The seal is weakening, and every time you call on my chakra, your will grows ever weaker. Red chakra seeped through the bars, then flooded out. Namikaze held up a hand, stopping the majority of the chakra. Namikaze smirked and said, I can still suppress most of your chakra by my will, even if it isn't all of it. 3. Red chakra was slowly leaking out from Naruto's Tenketsu. It formed a shroud around him, and a single tail issued from the shroud. Kakashi immediately raised his Sharingan. Kurenai began forming more hand signs. No doubt about it, Namikaze thought, she'll probably attempt her best and most powerful Genjutsu this time around. And I never managed to escape that one. The Anbu smiled and said, hey Kakashi. Want to learn a new technique? Kakashi watched closely as the younger ninja formed a single hand sign and said, Fuiten, Teju Uke's Shunpo no Jutsu. Kakashi watched in amazement as Namikaze used all the demon fox's chakra to create a narrow void corridor that extended as far as Kakashi's eyes could see. Furthermore, the Sharingan managed to track Namikaze as he moved at an inhuman speed down the corridor. Finally, the corridor disappeared, this all happening in the span of a fraction of a second. Kakashi thought, without a doubt, that boy has to be Naruto. I haven't felt the chakra ever since the Kyuubi attacked Konoha several years ago. About 2 miles away, Namikaze appeared just behind a tree at the edge of the market district. He promptly transformed into a simple child who looked a lot like a young Ruka Yamino. He limped into a nearby alleyway and sat down, hiding behind a group of boxes. He was panting and sweating from all the effort it took to just accomplish that one jutsu. He grabbed at his left foot and readjusted it back into position. As he used the technique, he had managed to trip over a root and sprain his ankle. He would be fine in a couple minutes. Namikaze looked to the clouds and thought, damn, I can't believe I ran into Kakashi so soon. I probably should have picked a different person to transform into. Izumi must be on a mission. I'll need to move fast. The technique was mostly for traveling long distances in a single second, not an escape through a forest. Furthermore, if they look too closely at the jutsu, one will realize it leaves a trail of chakra to wherever he was when the jutsu ended. He felt his ankle mend at a rapid rate. He grabbed his wrist. Though it was a little sore, it would continue serving him for a while. He formed a ram seal and exploded into smoke. Soon afterwards, a young Rock Lee was sitting in the alleyway. He exited the alleyway after determining no one was paying the alley any attention. Namikaze smiled and thought, alright, I might just be able to get away. However, it was all for nothing. For just 2 blocks away, Namikaze ran into the one person he didn't want to run into, especially now while in disguise. Yosh. Lee, what are you doing out here in the middle of the day? I thought you usually practice at the field at this time strengthening your fires of youth. You've been slacking off, that's what. Namikaze was careful to not frown, but his right eye betrayed him once again by twitching, Guy-sensei. Of course, I was just getting some groceries. I do need to eat to survive, Guy-sensei. Right. Light Guy grabbed his chin and said, that's right. How about I assist you in such a youthful activity? Then, we can go training together. If you do not succeed at gathering all your groceries in 30 minutes, we will do 200 laps around Konoha on our hands. Namikaze's fingers were now twitching and he saluted the Taijutsu master, saying, yes, Guy-sensei. Namikaze's mind went into overdrive, now what will I do? I'll just try to fake the fact I didn't bring any money. He felt his pouch and said, oh, Guy-sensei, I seem to have forgotten my money. Guy turned to face Lee, pulled back and swung a punch at the younger ninja. Namikaze focused his chakra into his transformation, hoping it would hold as the punch connected with his cheek. Lee flew backward into the dirt. Guy said, Lee, I had to do that. You shouldn't forget your wallet. Namikaze looked at Guy. He would regret it later, but for now, he had to play the Guy Lee mentor part. Guy-sensei. Tears flowed freely as he hugged the older ninja. Guy responded in suit while crying, it's alright Lee. The weird genjutsu appeared in their background. It was so horrible that Kakashi, who just showed up to watch the display, covered up his Sharingan eye to avoid it. I let go of Lee and said alright Lee. Let's go together, running 200 laps around Konoha on our hands. Namikaze decided that if he survived this, he would turn himself willingly into the Hokage that evening. He said, alright, Guy-sensei, but first I need to head back and pick up my money from my apartment. I nodded and said, alright Lee, go get your money. I'll wait here. We'll finish the shopping and then run 200 laps around Konoha. Now go, Lee. Namikaze saluted and said yes sir. He vanished on the spot. Several hundred meters away, Lee appeared and transformed into Genma. He sighed and said, thank God I escaped that one. In his mind, he vowed never to speak of it ever again to anyone. Chapter 5. Naruto Uzumaki. It was a moonlit night as a trenchcoat-wearing ninja with a mask ran through the streets of Konoha. An anbu appeared in front of him. He merely leapt to one building, attaching his chakra to the side and running along the wall. He quickly scaled it and continued on his singular trip to the Hokage tower. Several anbu gave chase as he approached the tower. Several shuriken were hurled at the fleeing ninja, to which all of them missed. The fleeing anbu captain leapt over alleyways and scaled building on his way to the center of the village. Finally, the anbu captain landed on the rooftop. 5 anbu took positions on each of the pillars on top of the Hokage tower. 2 white trenchcoat anbu captains appeared wielding kunai and wary of the ninja's every move. Suddenly, the Sandium Hokage appeared in the center of the tower. The fleeing anbu captain bowed to one knee and said, Hokage-sama, I have finally come to turn myself in. 2 anbu appeared at the captain's side and subdued him without a shred of resistance. Sarutobi said, why have you come, Naruto? Namikaze's fox mask was pulled off, revealing a blonde-haired shinobi with a massive smile, I've finally got the answers I need. With your permission, I would like to join the village as a Konoha ninja. Sarutobi looked at Namikaze, who looked quite genuine. He said, you will be placed in a cell and interrogated until we have determined you are not a threat to Konoha. At such a time, we will consider your offer. Namikaze nodded. He didn't mind the small prison time. In fact, he knew it would probably happen. Suddenly, there was a blinding pain as something slammed into his head. He wobbled for a second and blacked out. Namikaze awoke, groaning and wondering what happened. Then, it all came back to him. He was knocked unconscious by who knows what when he turned himself into the Hokage. Namikaze sighed and said, Oi, can we get on with this interrogation already? I have nothing to hide. Ibiki's cheery voice came back, good. Then we'll continue where we left off. First off, how did Orochimaru become Hokage? Namikaze thought about it for a second. He said, not exactly sure. I asked Orochimaru himself once how he became Hokage. There were two ninjas for the position of Hokage. A man by the name Minato Namikaze, I think it was. Of course, there was Orochimaru as well. The Sandaime almost picked Minato to be Hokage, but then, he died on a mission with Orochimaru. His eyes widened in complete shock as another piece of the puzzle that was his Konoha came together. He was stunned as he said, oh my god. Orochimaru, he killed Minato Namikaze and usurped the position of Hokage for himself. His face contorted into pure fury, team, when I returned to my Konoha he left the threat standing. Ibiki cleared his throat loudly, anyway. That didn't happen, at least in this world. You said that you became a missing nin, explain. Namikaze sighed and said, well, Sasuke Uchiha from my world went missing a little under 6 months ago. To begin with, there were several disappearances going on in Konoha. I proceeded to break in and search several suspicious buildings for information on Sasuke. That alone wasn't punishable, at least not seriously, for an anbu captain. It was when I went after some of Orochimaru's suspected ninja henchmen when the heat began to come down on me. Notably, there was a ninja by the name Yoroi Kato, I think. I beat him to a bloody pulp and he gave up one of Orochimaru's labs in Konoha. Namikaze stretched his legs, well, from there I merely raided the Waterfall Cavern lab. There, the remains of several shinobi were found. I stole some of the documents and fled to a nearby safe house for a couple days. Those files were filled with the specifications for Orochimaru's immortality technique. Ibiki said, wait a minute, immortality technique. Namikaze nodded, right. The technique is called Fushei Tensei, living corpse reincarnation. The technique can only be used once every 3 years. It's ironic because, according to its initial research and development files, the body often begins breaking down after 3 years. Itachi was taken over just before the Uchiha massacre and Sasuke's was overtaken 18 years after that. Ibiki glared at Namikaze. There was a contradiction in what he said, 18 years you say, but isn't it true that Orochimaru's body, at least according to what you said, breaks down after 3 years? Namikaze nodded, it's true, but if the body is correctly prepared over a certain time period, the body can last exponentially longer. It was probably around the 18-year time period that Itachi's body began to break down. So, Orochimaru had Sasuke prepared and overtaken. Ibiki finally moved into the light in the center of the room. He looked furious, you expect me to believe that, you damn punk. You think you can tell me anything just to get yourself out of prison? I'm not so easy to please. He snapped his fingers. Another assistant walked into the light, carrying the protrusion device. Namikaze shuffled in his seat a bit. He was finally put off base. He said, I already told you, I'll answer any questions you have. Ibiki grabbed the device and played with the mechanism to extend and retract. Tell me, who are you really? I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Ibiki paused and looked into his eyes. There was no deception present, though quite a bit of fear and anger. He nodded, good. Now, what are you doing in this village? Thus the questions fired off in a rapid manner. Namikaze was careful not to lie in the slightest as he revealed everything he knew to the master of torture and interrogations expert. Ibiki walked down the hallway to his office. He had returned to make his report to the Sandaime about the brat. It was almost 6 in the morning and he was very mad. Once again, the head of Anbu interrogations and torture had been forced to pull another all-nighter. Luckily, Ibiki would have the rest of the day off after he filled out the report. No matter how much he didn't want to admit it, Namikaze's world was incredible. He learned about Konoha's near destruction and a possible future. Also, Suna and Kusa might declare war on Konoha. Furthermore, there was the information about Akatsuki's members to consider. Some of the ninjas were well-known S-class criminals from around the world, such as Dodara, the terrorist bomber of Kumo, Hoshigaki Kisame, the monster of the hidden mist, and Sasori of the red sand. There were others, like Pain who was not in the bingo books, and finally a few that were of unknown villages such as Haiden and Kakuzo. He would be busy for a couple hours cataloging all the details. Naruto Uzumaki rose out of bed as his annoying clock rang way too loudly in his ear. He was in a sore mood from yesterday, discovering that he will have to take yet another test. Combine that with the fact that the replacement sensei with brown hair nearly killed him with a kunai, still left its mark on his mind. What the heck could he mean by teamwork is key anyway? Such were the thoughts that passed through his mind. He quickly changed out of his pajamas into his orange outfit. He paused for a second and looked it over. Didn't that sensei also say that the loudmouth ninja is the first to die on the field of battle or something like that? Ninja are to be stealthy. Bah, I like orange anyway. Besides, they wouldn't sell me anything else anyway because of that damn fox. There were a few plants sitting around in his apartment. They all grew something different in each pot. To be fair, Naruto was fairly good at gardening. He poured some water on them, giving them the nutrition for the day. Several birds chirping could be heard outside the window. Naruto took that as his cue to leave. What he didn't know was that Naruto was being watched by several anbu. Apparently when Namikaze released some of his Kyuubi's chakra, Naruto quickly became the primary suspect. However, last night at least, Namikaze surrendered and revealed himself to not be a Kage Bunshin. Now, the Anbu were ordered to watch Naruto closely for any connection to the unusual Anbu captain from another Konoha. Namikaze sighed as he rested in his jail cell. There were rows upon rows of sealing text marked throughout his cell. It was designed to prevent the use of chakra to attempt escape. He had been resting for about an hour in his dark solitary cell. There was a mild sound of creaking as someone entered the prison block. Killer Intent followed the woman in the tan trench coat. Namikaze smiled cheerfully at his once partner. "Oh. You came to visit me, Anko-chan. I'm truly touched. So, how did you enjoy your sleep last night?" Anko said in a serious tone, "The council has decided you are to be executed. I've been requested to do the honors." Namikaze looked into her eyes. He saw no lie. So the Anbu backed away from the blood-crazed Kunoichi. Anko pulled out a kunai and licked it. Her face turned into a wicked smile and the killer intent intensified. Suddenly, she closed her eyes and the smile reverted from wicked to happy. "Nah. Just kidding. I had nothing else to do, so I thought I'd torture you a bit for a change." Namikaze let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He thought, damn, she got me. I forgot she was also trained by an Ibiki. His face took on a sad grin. Pity. That means I'm stuck in this world a bit longer. You think if I break out, it will speed up the process? Well, only if you have a death wish. What should I remove in this first interrogation session? Your fingers, toes or teeth? No. Let's remove that tongue of yours that ticks me off so much. Namikaze twisted his head in confusion. You know, you really should be sent back to the academy. Those torture techniques are totally weak. I could use my bloody finger stumps to bleed out, then where would your revenge go? Anko smirked and said, but I know your secret, brat. Your resident won't let you die so easily. The Anbu captain opened his mouth, paused, closed it and said, touche, Anko-chan. So, on a more serious note, how's my case going? Anko looked thoughtful. The council is reviewing your file. We'll probably find out in a couple days. She waved her hand dismissively. Don't worry. Your execution will come soon enough. No need to be impatient about it. Namikaze's sweat dropped at that. Naruto arrived at the training ground about 5 minutes before the assigned time. It was just at the twilight hour, with a gentle breeze blowing through the clearing. There were no birds chirping, however there was no reason they would. The ninjas had cleared the area of most indigenous wildlife in the surrounding forest. Sakura was already there, though she looked fairly exhausted. Sasuke, meanwhile, was stretching, preparing for whatever Kakashi would put them through that day. Turns out, the three of them didn't even need to show up so early. As minutes turned into hours, the three of them were slowly becoming more impatient. Sasuke decided to sit down against one of the trees. Sakura just fawned over the Uchiha, which made Sasuke fairly irritable. Naruto, however, just stood there, contemplating Namikaze's words. Sakura eventually took notice of Naruto's attitude and said, "Hey Naruto. What's the matter?" Naruto looked up and put on a big smile. "It's nothing, Sakura-chan. I'm just thinking about yesterday and what that freaky sensei said about standing out as a ninja." She knew what he meant, with the teacher throwing a kunai and cutting Naruto's cheek. She assessed Naruto a bit. Her eyes traveled to the blonde's cheek when she noticed the cut in his cheek wasn't there. Sakura was about to ask about the cut when all three of them heard footsteps. They all turned to Kakashi, who smiled back at them and said in a jovial tone, "Good morning everyone." Sakura shouted, "You're late." Kakashi just chuckled and said, "A black cat crossed my path," so everyone just looked at him with a disbelieving glance. He coughed in his glove and said, "Let's move on." He walked over to a tree trunk and set a clock down on it. "The alarm is set to noon." Ironically, the clock's time said 11:07. Kakashi continued, "Today, you will be attempting to get one of these bells from me. Whoever can't will have no lunch." A squeak erupted from Naruto. Once again, Kakashi continued, "I'm going in that person to the stump and eat it whichever lunch is left in front of you." Sasuke thought, "So that's why you told us not to eat." Sakura said, "Wait a minute. Why are there only 2 bells? Since there are only 2 bells, one of you will have to be tied against the log. That person will fail since he failed to complete the mission." The image of Tsukumo Haddock entered Kakashi's mind. That person will be sent to the academy. It might just be one, or it could be all 3. Naruto's eyes widened. He thought, of course that's why that teacher said what he said. Teamwork is key. He means teamwork is needed to get the bells. Kakashi continued, "You can use your shuriken. You won't be able to get the bells if you don't come at me with the intent to kill." Naruto smirked and said, "You couldn't even dodge that eraser yesterday." He laughed. Kakashi said, "Those who have the least abilities tend to brag the loudest." "Well, ignore the dead last brat." Kakashi's taunt echoed through Naruto's head as he reached for his kunai holder. Suddenly, his hand stopped as another voice rose to quell Kakashi's. The loudmouth ninjas are usually the first to die on the field of battle. Kakashi, meanwhile, appeared behind Naruto with his own kunai in hand facing the back of Naruto's head. Don't get so hasty. I didn't say start yet. Kakashi looked at Naruto speculatively. Naruto swallowed and thought, good thing I didn't react. I would have died for sure. Kakashi on the other hand, was having different thoughts. He was clearly reaching for his kunai, but stopped. Minato-sensei, has your boy gained a bit of maturity? Or does it have something to do with the other Naruto? The jonin continued, looks like you had, even if it was for the briefest second, the intent to kill me. How should I put this? I think I can finally start liking you guys now. Naruto smirked at his sensei and thought, I got this figured out, sensei. We need to work as a team to defeat you. Kakashi said, alright. Start. The three younger ninja vanished into the trees while Kakashi wandered casually into the forest. He thought, I might be mistaken, but Naruto might have an idea about what's going on. Is it possible? Elsewhere, Naruto chased down Sakura and tried to convince her to work with him to get a bell. Come on, Sakura-chan. Did you see Kakashi move? We need to work together to obtain the bells. I'll split them with you. Sakura said, Naruto, if I worked with you and succeeded in getting the 2 bells, Sasuke would be sent back to the academy. Sasuke, what do you see in that team? Come on, Sakura-chan. Sakura sighed and said, alright, fine Naruto. She quietly asked Sasuke to forgive her. Perhaps she'd knock out Naruto and give the bell he'd obtained to Sasuke. Sakura said, now, we need to come up with a plan. Naruto, can you distract Kakashi? Naruto saluted and said with a brilliant smile, sure thing, Sakura-chan. I'd be glad to. Sakura, meanwhile, began weaving a small genjutsu taught to old Kunoichi at her age. It was a simple illusion that made it appear that she wasn't even there. Naruto simply ran out and challenged Kakashi to a one-on-one fight. Kakashi blinked at Naruto. If he didn't have a mask, he would be seen with an incredulous, unbelieving open mouth. You've got to be kidding, Kakashi thought. Naruto, I guess I was wrong. Oh, well. Sorry sensei, but I'm going to have to teach him. Kakashi reached into his bag. Naruto jumped backwards as Kakashi's voice came out, Shinobi's tactic number 1, Taijutsu. Suddenly, the Jounin's hand appeared with an orange book in hand. Naruto looked confused. Kakashi turned a page while muttering and chuckling to himself. Suddenly, he looked up and said, what are you waiting for? Don't worry about it. It's the same if I read it or not. Kakashi's eye suddenly darted to the left as the faint smell of soap and perfume entered his nose. He thought, hello Sakura. Naruto ran at Kakashi and said, I'm gonna pound you into the ground. He swung his fist backhanded at Kakashi's face, then performed a roundhouse kick. Kakashi blocked the first and ducked the second. Finally, Naruto swung his fist straight at Kakashi's face. However, his fist was met with air. Kakashi said, a ninja should not allow the enemy to get into his blind spots multiple times, idiot. Sakura nearly shouted for Naruto to block the attack and then realized he was still the distraction. She continued forward slowly towards Kakashi. Kakashi said, Konoha Taijutsu Ejeki, Senin Garashi. Must I translate this? Kakashi shoved his fingers up Naruto's bottom. Naruto flew several feet away into the river. Sakura kept moving ever closer to Kakashi. Kakashi decided to humor Sakura and reverse a genjutsu on her. He made 2 hand signs. Sakura suddenly heard wheezing several feet away. She turned to see Sasuke beaten and bloody with kunai protruding from his body. Her eyes went wide and an earth-shattering scream echoed from the Kunoichi's mouth. Upon her collapse, the genjutsu dispelled only 5 feet from Kakashi. Kakashi merely sighed, Shinobi tactic number 2, genjutsu. I think I overdid it a bit. But, she should have been able to detect the jutsu suddenly, 3 shuriken appeared right next to Kakashi. He grabbed 2 of them out of the air, but the third was by chance aimed right at the bells. They sliced through the cords before Kakashi sensed it. Furthermore, all 3 shuriken exploded, revealing Naruto's. The 2 attacked Kakashi simultaneously. Kakashi thought, crap, maybe I was wrong. Could it really be the third made a dive for the bells? The real Naruto dragged himself out of the river. He formed the cross hand sign and said, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 6 clones appeared side by side with the genin. He said, let's work together guys. Distract Kakashi as much as you can. Kakashi grabbed the first 2 clones and threw them towards the nearest trees. The clones thought fast and threw shuriken before slamming into the tree and exploding. Kakashi ducked below the shuriken. At that moment, the original third clone grabbed the bell. Kakashi pulled out a kunai and slashed at the genin shadow clone. The clone lasted just long enough to throw the bells towards the Naruto and his 5 newest clones. Kakashi's eyes widened, wondering just how the situation could have deteriorated enough that 2 genin could have distracted him enough to have removed the bells from his person. Suddenly, he felt the air pressure change all around him. He substituted with a nearby wooden stump he had in advance. Several shuriken and kunai struck the log. Suddenly, Naruto was upon the bells and he picked them up. Kakashi smirked from where he was hiding, interesting. So he succeeded in getting the bells. Now, how will he handle this situation? Naruto bent over Sakura and put one of the bells next to her. She woke up and saw the bell next to her. She said, Naruto, was this an illusion? Kai. She formed the ram seal, seeking to repel whatever illusion had happened. Naruto just smiled and said, no illusion. We did it, Sakura-chan. Sakura looked at herself, asking herself what she did. Sasuke, meanwhile, appeared in the opening. Sakura grabbed Naruto's bell and tossed it to Sasuke. Sasuke looked at the bell in disgust, but took it anyway. Kakashi just looked disgusted at Kunoichi. Several minutes later, the bell started ringing. Sakura and Sasuke watched as Kakashi walked into the circle. Sakura looked slightly ashamed of herself, but she felt she knew it was logical. Naruto was the one who needed the academy the most. Kakashi sat down next to Naruto and gently picked him up. He slowly pulled him to the stumps and tied him up. Kakashi then said, wake up Naruto. Naruto's eyes opened slowly and said, Kakashi-sensei, what happened? Wait, why am I tied to the stump? Kakashi sighed and said, that is a good question. Sakura, explain. Sakura went white for a second and looked at the ground in shame. She said, well, Naruto, I'm sorry, but I figured you needed the academy more than Sasuke, and I did, so I knocked you out and took your bell. Sorry. Naruto's eyes were filled with hurt. He said, Sakura-chan. A single tear rolled down his cheek. Kakashi said, well, as I said before, only one of you are being sent back to the academy. Naruto's head dropped in shame. Kakashi said, yep, Naruto is the lucky candidate. The other two, his eyes stared at the other two students in anger, will be dropped from the program. The two of them looked like a tree branch had slammed onto their heads. Sakura said, what do you mean dropped from the program? We got the bells, that was the point, wasn't it? Her eyes widened in realization as to the why. Kakashi nodded, you're getting it, aren't you, Pinky? A ninja must see through deception, and you fell for it just like that Jinjutsu. He didn't use her name, as she was a disgrace. Neither of you really worked for the bells. Sakura, you helped Naruto obtain the bells, but then you knocked out Naruto and gave the one who deserved the bell the most to the one who deserved the bell the least. Sasuke glared at Kakashi. Kakashi said, Sasuke, you did nothing at all. Furthermore, you accepted a bell that you didn't deserve. The jonin sighed and said, and lastly, Naruto. You were much closer than the others, but you were still short. You sacrificed Sasuke to save yourself and Sakura. You have potential, but maybe a year back in the academy will help you understand that. That's why none of you deserve to be ninjas right now. Kakashi thought about his father and how his teammates betrayed the White Fang. He could see it play out in the three right now. Sasuke sprinted at Kakashi, to which the jounin just slammed the genin against the ground. Why do you think we broke you up into teams of three? There was absolute silence. Naruto would have smiled at the fact he had managed to figure out something Sasuke didn't, but he was still reeling from returning to the academy prospect. The jounin continued, are you guys idiots? It's teamwork. Naruto nodded. Kakashi glared at Naruto, you don't get it, Naruto, so stop nodding. I wanted to see if you'd overcome the one stipulation on the mission. Sakura tried to lower her head more and said, those two bells instead of three, they were meant to encourage fighting amongst ourselves. Kakashi nodded, exactly, and the two of you fell headlong into it. As I said, Naruto almost succeeded but fell victim to his own hatred of Sasuke. If all of you had come at me, those bells could have been taken easier. Naruto, you managed to get a lucky hit with your shuriken clones, which allowed you to take them. However, I wanted to see how you would react once you got the bells. You three horribly failed that portion of the test. You will have to make life and death decisions in an instant. Sakura. I order you to kill Naruto or Sasuke dies. Sakura looked rapidly between Kakashi and Naruto while the jounin held a kunai to Sasuke's throat. Kakashi withdrew the kunai after a couple seconds, released Sasuke and walked to the monument. After letting someone be taken hostage, you will be faced with a difficult situation and someone will die. Are you, Sakura, willing to allow your teammate to die to stay with Sasuke? Look at this. He looked sadly at the monument with the genin to his back. This stone contains various names of heroes from this village. Naruto got excited, oh, I want to have my name on that stone, what kind of heroes are written there? Kakashi said, the Kia kind. Killed in action. A heavy breeze blew through the field as Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke seemed to mellow out at the sobering statement. The jounin continued, the names of my closest friends are written here, as well as my sensei and my father. They all paid the ultimate price for this village and the precious ones they loved. He turned his head, his eye filled with disgust, alright. I'll give you one more chance. But this time, it's going to be harder. The two of you, as I said, get to eat the lunches, but don't let Naruto have any. You get to go without because you didn't attempt to bring Sasuke into your plan last time. Anyone who feeds him immediately fails. Kakashi vanished into the woods and the two looked at their lunches. Sasuke sighed and waited around a bit. Finally, he said, "Here, you can have my lunch. I didn't earn it, you did. I should probably be the one tied up to that stump right now." Sakura looked shocked at Sasuke. She opened her mouth for a second, but closed it. Naruto said, "I don't want your pity. I can go for days, weeks without food. This won't affect me." However, the ninja's stomach growled. Sakura said, "No Sasuke. I'll give up my lunch to Naruto. I betrayed him, it's my responsibility." Naruto looked at Sakura with his blue eyes, still slightly hurt but also with some happiness as well. He said, "Well I can't because my hands are trapped. You'll have to feed me." Sakura sighed and thought, well alright just this once. Never again after this though. She used the chopsticks and fed a single morsel to Naruto. Suddenly, Kakashi burst out of the forest in a blast of smoke. He quickly formed several hand signs and lighting began striking out everywhere. He said, "You broke the rules and now have to pay for it." Naruto said, "But wait, you said we are a team, we are one. Put the good of the teammate foremost. The three of us are one." Kakashi said, "Is that it, is that your answer?" The other two nodded, uncertain but ready for anything. Kakashi said, "Heh, you pass." Everyone looked confused. Sakura said, "Huh? How'd we pass?" "They stormy sky left just as quickly as it came." Kakashi's expression was happy, "You're the first squad that ever succeeded. The others did everything I said and fell into every trap. A ninja must think beyond the normal. They must see through deception." He looked to the sky and continued, "In the world of ninjas, those who break the rules are scum. But those who don't take care of their comrades are worse than scum." Kakashi watched as the three celebrated. He thought, "Namikaze-sensei, you'd be proud of your son." Chapter 6. Namikaze Naruto. Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto. If I did, I wouldn't have written the last manga chapter. I would have chosen something different. As a thanks to everyone who reads my story, I present you all with a gift. The early release of Chapter 6. Thank you everyone for making this story my most well-read and reviewed of them all. I usually try to release a single chapter a week. Chapter 6. Namikaze Naruto. It was 2 days later when someone entered Namikaze's cell besides the ones feeding him. An anbu in white said, "Come with me. We are meeting with the council." Namikaze allowed his hands to be bound by a chakra cuffs that would limit the ability to use chakra. The anbu walked him through the open door and through a darkened hallway. Namikaze thought, "I always took the darkened hallways of the anbu building for granted. It's very effective for making a ninja off balance." They walked through several winding hallways. Luckily, Namikaze had at least he hoped the building layout down from when he was anbu captain. The only problem would be if this Konoha had changed the building for whatever weird reason or genjutsu of course. He could hear the occasional screams from a victim, no doubt reluctant to reveal his secrets. Namikaze mildly wondered if it was Mizuki that was being tortured. He was still alive when he left the traitor on the ground. Eventually, the voices died away as they started traveling down a long flight of stairs. Namikaze smirked as he recognized the underground tunnel connecting the council building and the Anbu headquarters. It extended for about a kilometer and then came up to the prisoner's entrance chamber. Sure enough, after about 1 kilometer of travel, in which Namikaze noticed several Anbu hidden in the shadows, they started traveling up a long flight of stairs. Once again, Namikaze's mind began wondering, I wonder, if I was captured in my world, would Orochimaru have just killed me on the spot or executed me in front of the council? Nah, he killed me on the spot of course, with that weird Sharingan technique. Eventually, after another maze of hallways, the white Anbu captain vanished from the spot. Several lights shone down on Namikaze as he stood in the center of a fairly big circular room. There were benches all around with various old people he could only guess were the council. Some looked fairly familiar. Shikaku Nara, Choza Akimichi and Inoichi Yamanaka sat together. Choza was eating some dumplings as they watched the proceedings. Several clan heads were present, among them an old terror named Tsume Inuzuka. He had particularly terrifying memories of her, at least in his world. Flashback. Tsume attempted several times to get Rin Inuzuka, who didn't exist in this world, and Namikaze together, especially after the Chunin exams. She had no concept of mercy at all and showed it every time the two met. She threatened to do horrible things to Namikaze if he didn't ask Rin out. He went along with it the first time around but discovered Rin wasn't the one for him, after all she was exactly like Tsume. Rin, however, liked Namikaze. Tsume threatened him to go on another date. This time, she assaulted Namikaze. He managed to keep her at bay with shadow clones and his wind jutsus and even escape in the end. Unfortunately, no one really escapes Tsume, much in the same way no one escapes Might Guy. The next time they met, she had 3 other Inuzuka hounds with her and virtually destroyed him with the attacks. Then, she proceeded to torment him over the next couple hours. The horrors that he was forced to endure were unimaginable. Then flashback, Namikaze shivered and tried to suppress those memories. Mostly, he didn't recognize the rest of the council members. Orochimaru would end up killing most of the council in his gruesome experiments. There were other clan heads he recognized. Hiashi Hyuga also stood out. They had a mutual respect for one another shortly after taking the Chunin exams. Something to do, no doubt, with fixing Niji's head. Lastly, there was the Sandaime, who was flanked by Himura and Kaharu. He recalled the details of Himura and Kaharu's executions for crimes against the Hokage. Neither of them could speak at that time, as they looked like their minds had been obliterated by some genjutsu. They were both beheaded and their bodies burned. He witnessed their executions as a 5-year-old child, and it stuck with him. Eventually, their positions as advisors would be replaced with Kabuto and another person he couldn't remember. Sarutobi said, "Good afternoon, members of the council. We are here to pass judgment on an unknown ninja who entered the village through unknown means. Would the defendant please give his name, rank and village association?" Namikaze said without hesitation, "Naruto Uzumaki, Anbu captain of Konohagakure." The council started chatting amongst themselves. Sandaime said, "Please, explain how you came to be in Konoha." Namikaze explained his attack on his world's Hokage, the strange space-time jutsu that Orochimaru used, and his sudden awakening in this world's Konoha. "Are you aware of the S-class secrets surrounding you?" "Yes. I am, and my counterpart in this world, a jailer of the Kyuubi no Kitsune." A civilian councilman shouted, "Impossible, there is only one Kyuubi. And he is contained in that demon child, Naruto." Namikaze glared at the councilman but restrained himself from releasing killer intent. There were several anbu surrounding him, and he didn't want to give them the chance to kill him before becoming a shinobi of Konoha. He said, "As you can see, councilman, I currently stand before you. I assure you that I do contain the Kyuubi, and so does my younger counterpart. As such, that means that there are 2 Kyuubi vessels in Konoha." Sarutobi said, "Enough. Naruto, why did you surrender yourself to me on top of the Hokage tower?" Namikaze responded, "I desired asylum and ninja status in your humble village, as I can no longer return to mine. I am a missing ninja from that village after attempting to kill Orochimaru. He was conducting experiments on various shinobi of Konoha, and he did it with impunity as the Hokage. No one believes me there anyway, and everyone else I care about is dead." The council went silent at this. Kaharu and Himura were speaking silently to the Hokage. Namikaze wondered if they were allies or enemies. He scanned the faces of the rest of the council. One of them especially stood out. He recognized the ninja as Orochimaru's second advisor, Danzo. Namikaze felt he should be slightly grateful to the bastard, as it was Danzo in his world that kept the crowds from killing him as a youth. Apparently, Danzo wanted to turn Naruto into a weapon. However, Kakashi Haddock and the ninja heads managed to stand up and outvote Danzo's proposal, and the civilians' desire to kill the Kyuubi brat. Furthermore, Danzo tried to keep Naruto on a short leash when he became a chunin by restricting him to village activities. However, it was, irony of all ironies, Orochimaru that shot down that proposal. Orochimaru wanted to use Naruto to his full abilities, so he was sent on increasingly more difficult missions to increase his skills. Finally, Orochimaru even took Namikaze under his wing and taught him all sorts of wind techniques and fighting styles. He never did allow Namikaze to learn his own snake techniques however, except for 1 or 2 defensive jutsu like the Nimpo, Shishi-Engine, Sound 4 barrier technique. His musings were interrupted by Sarutobi. He looked at the older man's face as he began, "I will now pronounce judgment. Naruto Uzumaki, you are allowed status as a Konoha ninja on a probationary status of 3 months. However, you will submit to a sealing jutsu which will seal away half your chakra away until such a time as I die or release the seal. In addition, you will be assigned a partner and have decided that it will be Anko Mitarashi." Sarutobi remembered that she was the most vigilant in seeking Namikaze. Now, it would be her duty to guard him. Naruto managed to suppress his laughter at the irony of being paired up with Anko in both worlds. Apparently though, Sarutobi wasn't finished. "You will be given a new codename, Namikaze, as you look so much like the Yondaime. If anyone asks you, your name is Namikaze Naruto as of now on, to hide your true identity as Naruto Uzumaki. You are the brother of the Yondaime and have no relation to Naruto Uzumaki, understood?" Namikaze nodded his head. "Lastly, you will be granted the title Takubetsu Jounin. If you prove your loyalty in the 3 months, you will be promoted to Jounin and considered for Anbu. On the other hand, if you do not prove your loyalty, you will be executed. Do you understand, Naruto Namikaze?" Namikaze nodded and said, "Thank you Sandaime-sama." The Sandaime nodded and said, "To everyone present, Namikaze's true name, identity and where he came from are now S-class secrets until such a time that he is determined to be a threat to Konoha. That will be all for the time being." Meeting adjourned. All the council members began filing out of the chambers. Some of them gave Namikaze a seething glare, while some looked speculative. They didn't say anything, but their faces spoke volumes. All of them were curious whether he was truly who he said he was and whether he would betray Konoha. Only the Sandaime looked pleased that it was accepted without objection. Namikaze was led away by a white-clad Anbu captain to a room to seal away half his chakra. Namikaze sighed and thought, well, could be worse. It was late afternoon as Naruto approached the Raymond stand for his usual gourmet. He approached the bar when he saw a red-clad ninja with a jonin vest. He was sitting in Naruto's usual spot. Naruto approached the ninja and said, "Hey, come on man, that's my usual seat. No one sits there beside me." Suddenly, a black sword was at Naruto's neck but did not make contact. The ninja turned and Naruto recognized him immediately. Why you? You're that pervert I met in the what was it? The man smirked and said, "The Anbu headquarters, right. I met you when I was being interrogated. Don't tell me my awesomeness has left you speechless. Alright, brat, I have a question. What did I say to you about loudmouth ninja?" Naruto thought for a minute and then said, "I don't know. I never talked to you after that." The man laughed, retracted his sword and said, "Maybe you'd recognize me better when I take this form." The ninja transformed into Izumo. He said, "Do you remember now?" Naruto pointed at the man and said, "Ah, that's right, you cut my cheek the last day in class. Wait, you also helped me in Kakashi's test." Izumo transformed back and said, "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Naruto Namikaze. Nice to meet you. Pull up a seat, I'll buy you 2 bowls of ramen, any type." Naruto looked at the older man with sparkles in his eyes and immediately said, "Old man, I'll have 2 extra large miso ramen with pork cutlets and the works." Old man Tucci replied, "Right, 2 coming up." Namikaze gave a big toothy smile and spoke up, "I'd also like 2, same as the kid." The ramen master nodded. While they waited, Naruto sized up his otherworldly self, though he was unaware. The man had a black short katana on his back, 2 kunai holsters on each leg, and a shuriken pouch on his backside. The man had almost no cuts or injuries at all until he saw his right hand. Naruto said, "Say, what's that on your hand Namikaze-san?" Namikaze looked at his right hand, examining the seal he had put on him a couple hours ago. There was a circular script of black ink with several dozen kanji written in small text. There is a fairly large swirl within the center of the circular seal. He smiled sadly, "It was something I had to pay a while back. Don't mind it. So kid, tell me about yourself." Naruto dropped his head in contemplation. "Well, I'm Naruto Uzumaki and I'm going to become Hokage someday." 1 bowl was set down in front of Namikaze while a second was placed in front of Naruto. Namikaze held his chopsticks up and uttered a small-eyed akimasu before eating some of his favorite food. After a couple seconds of slurping, the older ninja replied, "I already knew that kid. You told me in the interrogation room." Naruto paused from his dinner and thought, there's this pretty girl that is named Sakura Haruno. She's really cute." He trailed off, remembering her betrayal a couple days ago. Namikaze said quickly, "I know that as well. Remember, I was at the classroom that day. Your excitement at the prospect of being teamed with her was blatantly obvious to everyone there." He used the chopsticks to pick up a piece of meat and chew on it. Naruto replied a bit more quietly, "I'm not so sure about whether it was a good thing anymore." During the bell test the blonde genin told Namikaze all about the bell test. The Takebetsu jounin nodded and just listened. Finally, Naruto finished and the older ninja began, "Well, Naruto, there's no easy way of putting this. Girls, at this point in their lives, are more interested in guys than in being great ninja. In the same way, she seems infatuated with the young Uchiha. Furthermore, she is young and prone to doing irrational things as such. I think you should forgive her. She probably learned her lesson from Kakashi-senpai." Namikaze slurped down the rest of the ramen and set it down. "Furthermore, I also believe you should stop chasing after her. When she is older and more grown up, you might be able to pursue her. Besides, if you just focus on her, you might miss out on other people who see you for who you really are." Naruto dropped his head as Mizuki's deriding voice entered his mind. He muttered bitterly, "Yeah, I'm a demon." Namikaze's right eye twitched and he brought down his fist on the brat's head. Naruto yipped a bit and shouted, "What was that for team? For being such an idiot, letting what those idiot villagers say get to your head. I thought Iruka taught you better than that. You're Naruto Uzumaki of Konohagakure. I never want to hear those words from your mouth again." Namikaze looked absolutely livid with fury. Naruto shrank backwards and said, "Alright, just chill alright." Namikaze's face returned to its usual calm. He looked at the old man again and said, "Old man, we'll take the second bowl right now." Both ninjas sat quietly eating their meals. Finally, when their second bowls were finished, Naruto shouted, "Alright. Old man. I'll take another." Namikaze smirked and said, "If you get another, you're paying for it." "What? What do you mean? You said you'd buy me ramen." Namikaze closed his eyes, looking absolutely jovial, and leaned in close to Naruto's face. "Yeah, I said I'd buy you 2 bowls of ramen. And I've done just that. I had a feeling if I buy you more than that, I'd be out of money in no time." Naruto grumbled for a second and then thought of a strategy. Naruto formed a quick hand sign, sexy jutsu. However, Namikaze prevented the move by slamming his fist into Naruto's skull again. He said, "Don't do that move again. I'll beat you to a pulp if you try once more around me." Naruto rubbed his head and nodded in pain. Namikaze didn't eat any more ramen after 2 bowls. It was a habit picked up after being away from Konoha on several missions for days or weeks at a time. Ramen would taste better each time he ate it if he only ate it in small quantities. Naruto, meanwhile, decided to have 3 more bowls. The two chatted like old friends about the various flavors of ramen, arguing which one was better than the other. It was like watching 2 brothers argue. Finally, after Naruto was finished, Namikaze changed the topic to a more serious one. "So, you said you knew the shadow clone." Naruto gave a quick and cheerful in acknowledgement. Namikaze said, "You want to show me?" Naruto thought for a second and then said, "Sure." He got up, walked a couple feet away into the street and created a shadow clone. Namikaze smirked, tried to hold it in, and then burst out laughing. Naruto looked confused. Namikaze continued for a couple minutes and then caught his breath. "Hey, you do know how to make it. But I don't think you've quite mastered it yet." Naruto clenched his fist, making it go white. "What did you say, bastard? Don't disregard my skills. I've taken down a chunin with that skill. I can even make over 200 shadow clones in battle." Namikaze smirked, shrugged and closed his eyes. He sighed and said in a mocking tone, well, I stand corrected. You can destroy a chunin with 200 shadow clones." Namikaze chuckled and said with a more serious tone, "I can take down a jounin with 1. Naruto looked uncertain but determined to prove the older ninja wrong. Namikaze looked at the kid and said, "Tell you what, let's go to your training area. There we'll fight it out using nothing but shadow clones and taijutsu. What do you say, kid?" Naruto nodded and said, "You're on." 20 minutes later, Naruto and Namikaze were at the training ground where Naruto's bell test took place. Namikaze stood on one side by himself. Naruto stood in the other half of the clearing. Namikaze said, "Alright. You can use any weapons of any kind, along with transformation jutsu and shadow clones. I will," throwing away his sword for emphasis, "only use shuriken and kunai, plus any taijutsu style, shadow clones and transformation techniques. You, however, are not allowed to use the sexy jutsu or any perverted variant you may come up with." "Fair enough." Naruto nodded and formed the cross hand sign. Suddenly, the entire clearing was filled with over 100 Narutos. Namikaze looked around and stretched his muscles a bit. He could finish this easily, but he needed a workout. So, he settled into a special style he created quite a few years ago. And then it began. Namikaze focused on his targets one by one. He slammed his palm into the clone's chest, causing it to explode instantly. The open palm attack was followed by the ninja jumping over a roundhouse kick and landing on his left hand. From there, he spun on the hand, slamming his heel into another clone's jaw and palming a second clone with his right hand. Namikaze used his left hand to spring forward onto his right foot, spinning again. His left foot slammed into the center of a clone, with his left and right palm striking 2 different clones' feet, obliterating all 3 in a burst of smoke. He slammed his palm backwards, hitting a clone that got too close to his backside, and kept using his open palmed attacks to destroy clone after clone. After a few minutes, Namikaze decided to change styles to keep in practice with his others. He pulled both 2 kunai out of both holsters and slashed away at several different clones at once. About 10 clones at that point exploded. More clones threw themselves at Namikaze. He formed a single hand sign, creating a single shadow clone. They stood back to back and cut down any clones that came within 10 feet. After enough time, there was a massive amount of smoke surrounding Namikaze. Suddenly, the air currents changed, like something spinning was cutting through them from all directions. He formed a single hand sign. Several shadow clones appeared around Namikaze, creating a barrier of sorts. He heard the sound of flesh being cut as shuriken struck down all the shadow clones. Naruto watched as the smoke cleared and Namikaze was nowhere to be seen. The shuriken were lying in a ring right where Namikaze should have been. However, he wasn't there. Naruto said, "Don't move, anyone. The real one is among us somewhere." Each shadow clone looked at another suspiciously. Finally, a random clone threw a kunai, striking the Naruto who spoke. That Naruto exploded into smoke and several shurikens struck the one who threw the attack. It also exploded into smoke. Wherever Namikaze was hiding, he thought, let's see how I handle this pressure at his age. Naruto said, "Alright, everyone, dispel. The one who's left will no doubt be Namikaze." All the shadow clones exploded into smoke. There was a shadow who moved silently through the smoke and finally appeared behind Naruto. It put a kunai in front of the younger ninja's throat and said, "Pity. I guess that means my win." The smoke cleared, revealing Namikaze right behind Naruto. Naruto just smirked and said, "Not quite." The younger ninja exploded into smoke. Namikaze moved to escape, but Naruto was slightly faster. He was on Namikaze before he could move. Namikaze's eyes widened. "Wow, I never thought he'd figure it out." Well done Naruto, not that it's good enough, of course. Naruto said, I guess I win. He cut the older man's cheek, but then it exploded into smoke. Namikaze's voice boomed out from the nowhere, good, good. You've learned several impressive tricks using that clone. However, your clones lack one vital thing. Naruto yelled, yeah, what is that? Namikaze said, nope, you've got to figure it out for yourself. Here I come. Kakashi watched from a nearby branch as the new jonin absolutely destroyed Naruto's clones. After about an hour of the activity, Kakashi decided to put an end to this. He appeared right in the middle of an attack. He stopped Namikaze from destroying another shadow clone. Naruto was sweating from producing so many clones and having them all destroyed. Namikaze was only slightly panting. Kakashi said, alright enough. Namikaze-kun, you've proven your point, so let Naruto go home and get some rest. We have a training session at about 7 in the morning. Namikaze chuckled and said, so, Naruto, you should probably be there about noon, roughly. Also, have you figured it out? Naruto kept it panting, but then realized, oh, I use up a lot of chakra to create those clones, right? Namikaze nodded and said, keep going. So if I use fewer clones to complete a task, I'll be able to last longer. Namikaze said, so, how do you do that? I'm not quite sure. The Takebetsu Jounin sighed and said, survivability. Your clones don't survive very long. You need to learn some taijutsu skills in order to have them become stronger. Work on that, alright. Naruto nodded and ran off. Kakashi turned to the blonde Jounin and said, Sarutobi said you were acquitted, but I saw you use the Kyuubi's chakra to flee from our fight. Who the hell are you? Namikaze said, me. My name is Naruto Namikaze. I have no intention of telling you my likes or dislikes. As for my dream, I have many hobbies. Kakashi said, interesting, you copied my greeting to my students perfectly, which means you were watching me and have an interest in my students. Furthermore, how are you related to Minato Namikaze? Naruto said, I'm his brother. That's all you need to know for now, Sharingan Kakashi. Kakashi's visible eye narrowed as he said, I'll be watching you. Don't cause any trouble for my team. They are my comrades, and I don't take kindly to those who hurt my comrades. Kakashi walked away, but kept Namikaze visible in the corner of his eye. Namikaze said, good thing you were on time Kakashi-senpai. Who knows what would happen if you kept showing up late. Kakashi disappeared, but Namikaze stood still for a couple minutes. And then he said, Kakashi-sensei, you were always late. Please, don't let there be a repeat. Namikaze's troubles Amitsu Inuzuka. Namikaze Naruto walked a good distance from the training ground when he heard a female voice scream out, Gitsuga. The smell of sweat and dog filled his nostrils, and he moved on pure instinct away from whoever it was. He landed on a tree about 15 feet away and looked at whoever it was. There was a young woman, probably his age, who was on all fours with a dark-colored dog. Namikaze suddenly shivered. After his unfortunate interaction with Tsume, he became deathly afraid of any and all Inuzuka females. The woman sniffed the air and turned to Namikaze. The older ninja, on the other hand, was now hidden behind a tree. He thought, what the heck am I doing? She's just an Inuzuka. I don't even know her. She'll probably continue training and move on with her life while I do the same with mine. Yeah, that's it. Hey, what are you doing hiding behind a tree? A voice said in his ear. A very loud scream could be heard throughout half of Konoha. Namikaze turned his head slowly to see a young Hana Inuzuka. Her appearance just caused a ton of sweat to start forming on Namikaze's forehead. You see, Rin Inuzuka looked exactly like Hana. She didn't have the same voice or personality, but that never made it through his terror-clouded mind. He said, why yeah. You see, I was just. Hana looked at the former Anbu and said, hey, relax. I'm not going to eat you. She smiled. Oh, of course not, but Namikaze pressed his back into the tree, willing it to move and disappear. Hana was confused. The dog barked from several feet below. Naruto swallowed and thought, take a breath man. She's not Rin. Rin is in the other world, probably terrorizing some other guy. Yeah. It'll be just fine. Yeah. Unfortunately, another voice shouted, Hana, I need you back at the vet. One of the young pups injured his paw. Naruto's blood ran cold and his face turned deathly white. The voice was right below him and it belonged to Tsume Inuzuka. Tsume walked up towards the tree and leapt into it right next to Hana. The younger Inuzuka nodded and vanished on the spot. Namikaze Naruto didn't move as Tsume started sniffing at him. She said, you're the older Uzumaki brat, right? Namikaze managed to force a very. Instead, she started sniffing him for several long minutes. Suddenly, she started smiling, not a good sign to the jounin. She said, well, you smell like the brat, that's for sure. Tsume looked him over for a minute. She smiled again, alright. You seem to like my daughter. Although you have been approved by the Hokage for now, I'll have to have you over one night to see if you are alright for dating Hana. Namikaze squeaked pathetically, what? Tsume slapped his back and said, don't worry. I have a good nose about these things. Come over for dinner after your next mission. Namikaze attempted to squeeze out a protest, but soon put an end to whatever hope he had. However, if you hold her up, I'll chew you up, spit you out and use you for feeding my dogs. Her face was suddenly full of fury and anger. A sizable amount of killer intent was pouring over the blonde-haired jonin. She jumped out of the tree and started running. Her wolf companion followed right next to her. The older ninja collapsed on the tree, wondering how he got himself back into this mess that he managed to escape. At night, Namikaze had recurring dreams of the terror unleashed by Tsume and Inuzuka. Chapter 7 Mission Hunters. Kakashi landed in front of the Hokage on top of the Hokage tower. It was a full moon with perfectly clear skies. A warm wind blew through the village and tugged at the old man's robes. The Hokage just stood there, looking at the stars as if they held some secret hidden from him. He inhaled on his pipe and then exhaled, releasing a long stream of smoke which slowly dissipated in the wind. Sarutobi finally seemed to take note of the blue-masked shinobi in front of him. He smiled like the wise sage he was and said, "So, you met the Yandame's brother, Naruto Namikaze." Kakashi nodded. "Sandame-sama, you know as well as I do that Minato-sensei had no living relatives, with the sole exception of Naruto Uzumaki. What do you know of the man?" There was another long pause as the old professor took the time to pull out an answer. Finally he said, "Naruto seems to like him. I don't necessarily trust Naruto Namikaze, and I've taken precautions in case of betrayal, however." He formed several hand signs and finished with the ram seal. A small wave of chakra shot out from Sarutobi's feet. Kakashi suddenly couldn't hear anything but the Hokage's breathing. Sarutobi spoke slowly, but softly and amicably, "Kakashi, what I am to tell you now is an S-class secret. What do you know about the Kyuubi?" Kakashi was taken aback. "Naruto has it sealed into him by the Yandame, but I also saw some Kyuubi chakra leaking out of Namikaze as well. What relation does Namikaze have to the Kyuubi no Kitsune?" "Everything. The truth is Naruto Namikaze is Naruto Uzumaki. There are two Narutos in this world." Kakashi suddenly looked as if some pieces were beginning to fall in place, but not nearly all of them. He first said, "I sure hope it was a joke, because the implications of such a thing would be huge. But how is that even possible, for there to be two Narutos?" Sarutobi nodded and began explaining what Namikaze had revealed to the entire council. The next morning, Namikaze arose at roughly 7 in the morning. He shivered at his horrid dreams and the events that transpired yesterday. He quickly changed out of his sleeping outfit into his ninja gear, fully anticipating a mission today. The sound of birds chirping came in from the window, and he stopped. Every time he heard those birds, he thought of Sakura and her death. His eyes glazed over for about 5 minutes until the birds left his window. He shook his head and continued preparing for his mission. "I will not allow the same fate to befall Sakura-kun this time around," he thought to himself. After frying up some eggs and grabbing a small bag from his dresser, he exited the apartment and jumped off the second-floor balcony to the street below. Suddenly, Sarutobi's words came to mind, "You will be partnered with Anko outside the village in missions." Anko was going to be ticked to be his partner. He sighed and disappeared from the spot. He used his chakra to cling to the walls as he ran along the side, avoiding balconies and windows. His chakra control was still not where he wanted it at the time. After Sarutobi sealed away his chakra, he discovered that he couldn't control it as well as when he was in Anbu. He would use up way too much chakra as a result. If he could compare his chakra levels to anyone, it would definitely be Kakashi Haddock's level without the Sharingan, so he couldn't use shadow clones as massively as he could before, at least until the seal was removed or he adjusted to the chakra level, which would take who knows how much time. After a few minutes of running along walls, he landed noiselessly in front of Anko's house. He sat down on a nearby bench and waited. The door opened to the apartment complex first floor and out walked Anko Midarashi, just putting on her trench coat. There was a skewer of dango sticking out of her mouth. She looked at the male ninja and paused. Namikaze's right hand rose to his face defensively, resulting in a sharp pain in that hand, but the ninja only gritted his teeth. He said, "Thanks Anko, that glove was new." Out of his right hand, a wooden dango skewer now protruded through a leather fingerless glove. Anko said, "Don't worry about it. I was just breaking those gloves in for you." Namikaze grabbed the skewer and ripped it out. A small amount of blood pooled around the wound. Steam started rising as the wound closed itself. Anko whistled and said, "That's something incredible helpful. Now I have a question team, how did you trap me into being your teammate? Why couldn't you torture that toothpick prick, Genma?" Naruto N. laughed loudly and replied, "You're more skilled than Genma. Hokage-sama wanted me closely watched, not that you could stop me if I did try to escape. Come on, let's go get ourselves a mission." She didn't argue that, remembering the bar incident with a very slight blush of embarrassment. Sarutobi had just finished talking to Hade about his mission to guard a feudal lord as he traveled to see a friend in Kumo. Apparently, some bandits attempted to waylay them in a mountain pass. However, they underestimated the youngest person to ever master Mizukuri no Mai, Dance of the Crescent Moon. The payment was received upon completion. Hayate did not look very well, as his bouts with pneumonia were getting worse. He kept on telling the sickly ninja his concerns with his health, but he just said he was fine. Sarutobi said, "Hayate, you've been a fine ninja, but I think it's really time to consider your health. After the Chunin exams, I'm going to ask for a paid leave of absence until your health has fully recovered. I don't want you dying at such a young age, as you have a bright future before you." Hayate looked shocked but nodded, knowing there would be no arguing against the Hokage. He bowed and said, "As you wish, Hokage-sama." The Chunin exited, appearing somewhat dazed. After he left, Sarutobi was the only one in the room. A few minutes later, a couple loud noises could be heard arguing down the hallway. "Tastes it's too mushy dango is so stop brat. What's saying? Raymond best likes Raymond, especially Ichiraku. It's a masterpiece good for generations, old and young, tall and short." The door slid open again and the argument continued. Suddenly killer intent could be felt directed at them. Namikaze stopped talking immediately. He looked at the Hokage, who had a hair-raising look on his face. Anko swallowed and said, "Old man, give us a mission." Sarutobi just sighed and dropped the small amount of killer intent he was projecting at the two of them. "Alright. We currently do not have any B rank missions available. For C rank, we have escorting a bank or two." Namikaze replied, "No, do you have any bingo book target missions?" Sarutobi looked down. There was a BA rank target that was near the Konoha-Iowa border, but he was unsure he wanted to send the son of Minato from another world to the edge of Iowa. They might discover something about Naruto Uzumaki. He thought for a second and then said, "Alright, I do have a mission, but I will only allow you to take the mission under one condition. Should the target flee across the border, do not give chase, understood?" Anko said, "Sure thing old man. Now what's the mission?" Sarutobi set down the A rank scroll and said, "The target's name is Shiro Takano. He's a former cloud ninja wanted for assaulting their daimo's financial advisor and several of his guard. The ninja's information and current whereabouts are recorded inside the scroll." Anko picked up the scroll and began walking out. Namikaze just stood there for a second as he watched her leave. He said, "Thanks, Hokage-sama. Anko must still be slightly upset about being teamed up with me." He grabbed his chin speculatively, "Come to think about it, I don't think she was ever too thrilled about it when I was assigned captain of her anbu squad. She longed for the position for the longest time." Sarutobi said impassively, "Give her time. No doubt, she'll come around sooner or later." Naruto walked towards the door. Sarutobi put the pipe in his mouth and said, "Naruto. Mind if I ask, why do you call me Hokage-sama? You really don't seem all that different from your younger counterpart." "He calls me old man Hokage and not in a very respectful manner." Namikaze turned, showing a sad smile and replying, "I call you Hokage-sama because you are the first Hokage I've met who deserves my respect. Remember, I was trapped with the Orochimaru team as my Hokage." Sarutobi said, "For what it may be worth, I'm sorry my boy. I don't blame you, Hokage-sama. I credit the blame where it is due, the bastard snake." The former Anbu captain bowed and exited through the doorway. Another pair of civilians looked at the two ninja and started glaring. The two just kept walking as if nothing had happened. Anko used one of her dango skewers she kept in her pouch to loosen some of the fish stuck to her teeth from the morning meal, disregarding the civilians' glares. Namikaze watched the civilians' faces turn brighter when seeing him. One of the two women whispered into the other's ear. The second started blushing a bit and waved. The ninja nodded in her direction but spoke to Anko, "You ever get tired of everyone looking down on you?" Anko finally succeeded in freeing the bit of fish and swallowed. She said, "I don't really care what those pricks think of me. If I cared what they thought, I would have resigned from being a ninja years ago. Why bother worrying about it when you can do nothing about it?" Namikaze frowned but nodded. Namikaze used to be glared at by the villagers all the time in his Konoha. But their opinions slowly changed over the years for the most part. To them, it was still possible that the demon child was responsible for all the disappearances in the village, but most didn't believe it, especially those who actually knew him. Here, however, these people haven't let go of their hatred of Anko and her association with Orochimaru. He mentally shrugged, realizing Anko probably made herself out to be her own uniquely annoying, slightly evil psychopath. Namikaze decided to open the scroll and start reading up on their target. They could use all the advantages they could get. He felt in his shuriken pouch on his back and paused for a second. His eyes widened and he felt around for it. His hands were cut on a couple shuriken. Then, his hand rested on the pouch he put in there last night. He pulled it out and looked inside. His face contorted as he thought, only 5 of them crap. I'll have to make more later. He returned the bag to his shuriken holster and continued reading. Anko noticed her partner's face went through surprise, relief and frustration all at once. She also noticed the bag he looked into and said, "What's in there?" Namikaze said, "Oh, just a few surprises for our enemy. I'll have to replenish my supply later." The two continued through the village towards the gate. Aoba and Shinji, a newer Takebetsu jounin, were at the entrance. Shinji nodded at the two of them. There were trees in every direction. Anko said, "Well brat, looks like you're in my care from now on." Anko thought back to a couple days ago when Sarutobi had called her into his office. Flashback. Anko walked calmly down the hallway to the mission room. Sarutobi was alone, probably because he didn't want anyone to be around when he gave her the instructions for the mission. Anko said, "What's the matter, old man? I heard from the Anbu that I have an important mission." Sarutobi nodded but appeared slightly saddened. "Anko, I am assigning you to guard the older Naruto Uzumaki." The Kunoichi's eyes widened. Her mouth opened to protest, the old man put up his hand. "Also, you will now be calling him Naruto Namikaze. His true identity has already been breached enough. I do not trust him because he just appeared out of nowhere. So, I added a second layer to the seal, should he prove to be a problem. The seal will kill him under several conditions. First, should I die, he will die. Second, I have also tied his seal to a medical sample of your chakra. Should you die, he will die. Third, should either one of us come to the conclusion that he is a risk to the village, we can activate the seal. Finally, should he attempt to alter the seal, it will activate and he will die. You will use your discretion in dealing with the ninja." Anko nodded, but her eye twitched in frustration. She was assigned to him of all people. Then flashback. Anko suddenly found herself stroking at the kunai pouch. She relaxed and opened her mouth to speak. However, Namikaze said, "Be quiet Anko, I'm trying to concentrate on something." Anger and killer intent radiated off of her in waves. Several birds in the air froze up mid-flight and crashed into the trees as the killer intent was so great. Namikaze's eyes stopped scanning the document as he sensed his life was now in danger. Naruto Uzumaki was sitting around, waiting for Kakashi to arrive when he suddenly felt a clammy feeling go down his spine. He looked around, but there was only Sasuke and Sakura, the latter looking more subdued and her fawning over Sasuke. She looked over at Naruto, who looked fairly scared. "Naruto, what's wrong?" He looked again at the pink-haired Kunoichi and said, "Do you feel that? It's like someone is choking me." Sakura looked surprised but shook her head. Naruto tilted his head a bit in confusion. Suddenly, smoke exploded from nowhere and quickly vanished. In its place, Kakashi stood with his usual eye smile. "Yo." Naruto and Sakura walked over almost in a daze. Sakura recovered first and asked, "Are you really Kakashi-sensei? You're almost on time for once." It was true. He was only 30 minutes late, which was impressive by most standards. Kakashi coughed and said, "Let's begin. Today, we cover Taijutsu." Blood dripped from the kunai as it was held to its master's neck. Anko blinked, suddenly having her mind clear of the anger that was with her only a minute ago. She looked around, but then noticed the bloody kunai. The Koichi said, "Well played, brat, well played." Namikaze smiled as he withdrew the kunai from her throat. Anko reached up and wiped at the cut on her cheek. Namikaze reached inside his backpack and said, "Here. Let me take care of that." He carried a medkit at all times after the Waves mission. First, he pulled out some disinfectant, sprayed it on a cloth, and put it to her cheek. She winced a bit in pain, but did not yell out. Then, he used some bandage tape to secure the cloth into position. Anko looked surprised at the care he had used when dealing with her injury. Then, the memories of the last couple minutes came back. Flashback. Anko was suddenly holding a kunai overhead in her hand as she rushed the ninja. Namikaze slammed his free hand, forcing her hand to let go of the weapon. He followed up with an open palm to her sternum. That attack pushed her backward several paces. Namikaze caught the kunai and threw it after her. She managed to mostly avoid the attack, but it still grazed her cheek. She felt the air pressure around her for the briefest instant. Namikaze appeared behind her, caught the kunai, and put it to her throat. Then flashback. Namikaze spoke up, "Are you relaxed now?" Anko nodded and Namikaze backed away. The blonde continued, "Sorry for ignoring you. I was just reading up on Shiro-kun in our mission file here. He is apparently called the Strong First of Kumo. He's a Taijutsu master, so we'd be best off using ranged attacks." The two of them continued down the road as they talked. "So basically, this guy's the guy of Kumo?" Namikaze's face turned a shade wider at that comparison. His mind drifted back to his last fight with Guy, in which he barely managed to keep up with him. He considered the possibilities of two guys in this world and began shaking his head. "Don't even joke like that, Anko. Guy and his little clone are bad enough. The last thing we need is another guy walking around in the world." The talk continued for several minutes as they discussed the ninja's specialties and possible attack strategies. They didn't even seem to take notice when some bandits surrounded them. The big fat one, obviously the leader, said, "You two are surrounded. Give up your money and we'll let you go about your business." Anko kept looking at Namikaze, "So, I'll summon some of my little friends and send them to bind Shiro up. You use your wind jutsus to decapitate him." "That would never work, Anko-chan. This guy is a jounin. We'll have to be slightly more clever in luring him into our trap." Perhaps we should set up some explosive notes around the area and the bandit leader shouted, "Hey. I'm talking to you. Listen already or we'll carve you up." Namikaze and Anko looked at him with dubious and bored looks. They turned to face each other again, as I was saying, explosive notes would be effective. Let's use the Kekai Hajin, barrier encampment method, explosive notes. We'll set them up in a square formation and lure him there. Anko said, "Look, I don't mind traps, but the guy will probably escape long before it goes off. Besides, it lacks I don't know style. You'd know all about that with your fishnet technique. No pervert would be able to stand against that. I don't even think Jiraiya could take you on. Aren't you a pervert yourself?" I heard about the incident in the torture and interrogations. Finally, the bandits got bored of listening to the pointless bickering and ran at the two ninjas. There were 4 in total. Anko ducked under one attack. 2 snakes, a copperhead and tiger snake, shot out of her sleeves and encircled her 2 opponents. Namikaze cut through his target swords with his own katana. He also held one kunai to the shorter bandit and the point of his short katana to the leader's throat. He said as his cheeks blushed, "I am not a pervert. On another note, are these guys worth anything?" Anko pulled out her bingo book and flipped through the pages. None of the 4 bandits made any of the picture bingos. However, she flipped to the fire country list. Namikaze seemed to sense what she was doing and said, "Hey, what's your name?" The big guy tried to not say anything, but felt the blade pierce his neck skin. He said, Ryuma Kido." Anko sighed and said, "Nope. Nothing." The 4 sighed in relief. Anko and Namikaze, however, smirked evilly. The snakes hissed as they bit deeply into their captured prey. Namikaze decapitated the underling with the kunai and then pierced the leader's throat with the sword. Anko's foes started foaming at the mouth and Namikaze's only surviving foe reached for his throat. The former Anbu captain pulled out his blade and wiped it clean. The bandit leader's eyes looked confused. Namikaze said, "You picked the wrong 2 people to mark, idiot. Can't you see we're Konoha Jounin?" The leader's eyes rolled into his head. Anko said, "Rest in peace and hell, fool." She pulled out a scroll and began scratching out some sealing ink. The male Jounin asked, "Didn't you say he wasn't worth anything?" The snake woman said, "I lied. His head's worth 200,000 ryo. We'll drop him in the bounty office by the waterfront on the way. Besides, why did you kill him? I knew he was worth something, but you just killed him for no reason." The male ninja smiled cruelly, "Remember, dear Anko-chan, that these criminals were willing or stupid enough to ambush Leaf Shinobi. If they learn from their mistakes, they might actually become a hazard for us shinobi in the future." Anko blinked as she looked at Namikaze. For a second, the male ninja had a similar aura as her old sensei. But they both also knew that a living bandit could cause trouble for other Konoha ninja. She remembered a time that a couple genin died on an escort mission for a feudal lord. The bandits were let free a couple days earlier by a young Takubetsu Jounin. If that Jounin had just killed the bandits at that time, Namikaze nodded and watched with morbid curiosity. Anko continued drawing out the seal array and them formed several hand signs, finishing up with rat. Chakra ejected itself from the scroll and surrounded the bandit. Suddenly, it disappeared and the visible blue chakra entered the central seal. A red kanji for sealed appeared. Anko rolled it up. She summoned a couple medium-sized snakes and gave them the task to eat the remains of the others and go home afterwards. The summons nodded and got to work eating. The 2 ninja continued on their path as if nothing had happened at all. On the Konoha-Iwa border, a gruff older ninja was resting against some rocks. He was on the edge of the forest and looking down the road. He thought, "I wonder who will come next. Will it be Iwa ninja, maybe more cloud hunters? Could be some of those tree-hugging Konoha ninja." He smirked at the idea for a second, "Nah. They don't have the guts to send their ninja after me. I don't really care if my bounty is only 10 million ryo. They don't have a chance. I haven't had a good fight in a long while." Little did he know that he would soon get more than he bargained for. Namikaze's troubles pervert. Namikaze rested against a tree near a river. He had a wet cloth in one hand and his bloodied kunai in the other. Anko took a drink from the river and said, "Well, I could always distract him with my devilishly good looks. Then, as he's distracted, you jam your sword through his back. I follow up with a snake bite to his throat." Namikaze stopped cleaning his tools and stared incredulously at his partner. Anko stared back. An awkward silence fell. Finally, Namikaze spoke, "Are you an idiot? Do you not remember that he's a jounin? If anyone will see through that, it'll be him." Anko said, "I don't know. It worked on half the targets I've eliminated before." "Oh. I see." She looked at Namikaze with a dubious but playful expression. Namikaze saw the look and became confused. Why are you looking at me like that?" She gave a small chuckle and said, "You can't handle my devilishly good looks." Namikaze's face turned completely red at that. His voice broke as he responded, "And no. That's how could you possibly think that?" Anko smiled cutely, "A terrible sign indeed. I know all about the incident down in the torture and interrogations department with your younger half. You're a pervert. Namikaze looked away, clearly annoyed. After a few minutes, the male jonin stood up, sheathing his sword and kunai. Let's go. We need to catch Shiro before he gets across the border. Anko chuckled and said, sure pervert. Namikaze's hands clenched in frustration. Anko thought, I finally got something on him. This is gonna be fun. She licked her lips and followed the jonin. Anko would never let him live it down for years to come. After 8 strong fist, the surrounding area began to thin out as they slowly but surely approached the Iowa border. Furthermore, the trees seemed to be losing health the further they got to the border. They were all white and dead looking. Anko pulled out the bounty meeting places notebook. There was a set schedules where the bounty hunter officers will be located throughout each of the elemental nations. The schedules were only given out to the upper echelon torture and interrogations heads of each village once every 6 months. Anko received hers from Ibiki because he wasn't much of a field agent. Missing ninja could obtain them through various means, but rarely went after the bounty officers for different reasons. Some, like Kakuzo, were well liked by the bounty offices, so he managed to stay off most bingo books of foreign nations. She frowned and said, change of plans. The bounty officer is not going to be present there. He was scheduled to be located at the mountain meeting spot in 30 minutes. It isn't too far out of the way, so we can make it there and then go to where the strong fist might be. Namikaze shrugged, yeah sure, that's fine. All 200,000 ryu will be sent to Konoha, and we'll probably get about 75,000 ryu each. Shiro walked down the road to where his contact would meet him. The man would take him into Iowa, where he would gain some purposeful employment in the employ of the Tsuchikage. He was known to employ some former missing nin. He would meet him outside an abandoned structure carved out of a valley in a rock outcropping just outside the forest. He would probably be there in 30 minutes. Anko finally made it out of the forest and got a glimpse of the meeting point. A massive stone outcropping rose several hundred feet into the air as they came closer. The outcropping formed a wall on 3 sides and created a sort of spherical amphitheater. At the base of the outcropping, there was a small doorway carved out of the rock. Anko said, I'll take care of getting this guy's bounty. We wait outside. Namikaze gave a mock salute Anko didn't see and sat down against the outcropping. Inside, Anko walked through the entrance chamber into the abandoned structure. She set down the scroll and began forming several hand signs. Blue chakra ejected itself from the seal and released a body. The body of the bandit had turned white, which was expected as the guy was dead. She picked him up and walked to the center of the room. She tapped her foot twice at the center of the room and waited 5 seconds. In the corner, a secret passage opened. Inside, there was an older man while gray robes and some brown sandals. He said in a grisly but friendly tone, Anko-kun. It has been a while. You've brought me another bounty. Why, I thought you had long since abandoned field work about a year ago during that incident with your fellow squadmates. Something about being called Orochimaru's brainwashed pet or something. Anko frowned a bit and said, old man, it really has been far too long. Yeah, this guy, Ryume Kido. She walked across the dark chamber and set the body down in one of the catacombs. The old man came over and took a look at his face. She continued, if his name was true, he is worth 200,000 ryu. However, he was listed without a picture to go with the name in the bingo book. Can you confirm for me? The old man withdrew a bounty voucher book and began searching the various pages for the man. Outside, Namikaze watched in interest as a man walked towards the abandoned building. The man in the distance looked like an ordinary traveling merchant, but Namikaze wasn't so sure. The man kept scanning around for something. Then, the merchant stopped just at the entrance and started waiting around. Namikaze stood up and shouted, hey. How's it going? He raised his hand in a calm and friendly gesture. The merchant turned around, appearing startled that there was anyone else in the area. The Jounin's eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second. His amicable appearance all of a sudden became a mask as his inner anbu took over in an instant. He said, so, what are you doing around here in the middle of nowhere? The man said in a shaky voice, well, I'm waiting for my escort to Iowa. I was supposed to meet him here. Are you him? Namikaze shook his head, and that's truly odd. Most people get missions from the Hokage in Konoha. That's quite a few miles away, an entire day's travel in fact. So, who's your escort? Maybe I can help somehow. The merchant suddenly felt trapped. But then, the ground started shaking. Namikaze drew his sword and looked around, completely alert. Suddenly, the ground below his feet cracked. He looked down in complete shock as he was suddenly engulfed by a rock dragon that shot up and swallowed the ninja hull. The dragon stopped moving, fell over and shattered into thousands of rocks. Namikaze was nowhere to see. A standard-clad cloud jounin appeared out of nowhere next to the merchant and said, I'm here. Let's get across the Iowa border before his partner comes out and sees that he had died. Suddenly, a voice appeared out of nowhere, kukuki kuku. You think you're good enough to take me down? Imagine my luck I meet you here. I'll take you on, Shiro Takano, the rock fist of Kumagakure. Shiro looked around and spoke up, "How do you know who I am?" Namikaze's voice drifted in from who knows where, "You are our target. Time for you to die." Suddenly, the missing nin jumped out of the way as the ground split under a wind side. Shiro looked up and saw Namikaze attached to the rock with chakra. Namikaze started clapping, "Not bad, dodging that. How long will that luck hold up?" I wonder. The jonin ran along the wall towards the missing nin. Shiro formed a single hand sign, while Namikaze followed suit with a different one. Naruto moved instantly using Kei's Shunpo, wind flash step, and thrust his sword into the man's guts. However, his eyes widened as his blade stopped after cutting straight through the man's clothes and vest. Shiro laughed and slammed his wrist into the jonin's face. Namikaze flew backwards into the rock outcropping. The impact caused a deep crater to form upon impact. The ninja stuck there in the wall. He jumped down and walked towards the merchant. Suddenly, the ground beneath Shiro's feet cracked and a snake shot out from the ground. He was prepared as he leapt backwards. The snake chased after the ninja, attempting to swallow him whole. Takano kept jumping backwards as he formed several hand signs, Doten, Iwayado Kuzushi, Earth Release. Rock Lodging Destruction. Several rocks dislodged themselves and slammed onto the head of the snake, crushing its head. Anko suddenly appeared behind the man swinging her fist. Shiro let the attack hit, which didn't affect him at all. Anko was just surprised as Namikaze. However, she recovered fast enough to block his punch. The attack, however, still sent her towards the rocks next to Namikaze. She landed on her feet right next to the imprinted jonin in the wall. Namikaze ripped himself out of the wall and attached his feet to its side. Well. This could be troublesome. Looks like I can't cause him damage with my wind-enhanced sword, and your punches, Anko, don't have any effect. He grabbed inside his back pouch and pulled out the little bag he had previously. Namikaze said, "Looks like I'll have to use these already. Damn, if only I had some water, then I could use my water techniques instead." Anko said mockingly, "Aren't you supposed to be some shadow clone genius? Why don't you just swarm him?" Namikaze dropped his head in shame. He held up his hand, showing the seal, but there was a mistake in the sealing process. I lost more than 3/4 of my chakra behind it by accident. And I still have enough chakra to beat Kakashi's in his prime. That's what happens when we don't have a skilled sealer around in Konoha. So, I'm adjusting as well as I can. I need you to distract him for a single second, but don't get too close. Trust me, you don't want to be near him when my attack hits." Anko saw a smile in his eyes. Shiro said, "Enough waiting, I'm coming for you." He leapt onto the wall and began running on the side of the wall. Anko launched several hidden snakes at the target, but none of them could grasp him. Shiro just smiled as result. He punched Anko right in her face, but then she exploded into smoke, revealing a wooden post and several exploding tags. Shiro cursed as the bombs went off, sending him to the ground just at the edge of the rock amphitheater entrance. Namikaze pulled something small out of the bag and threw it right after the target. He gave an evil smile and thought, game over. A small seed-like object he threw suddenly glowed brilliantly and then exploded into chakra. The chakra formed into a pure wave of the purest white and washed over a 100-foot area surrounding where Shiro had just landed. Dirt and smoke rose into the air, making it impossible to see through for a minute or two. Anko's mouth hung open in utter shock. She turned to Namikaze and said, "What the hell was that, brat, isn't that an overkill technique?" Namikaze remembered who he had first designed the technique for and shook his head, "No. I learned real fast that, in the field, there is no such thing as overkill. That jutsu is completely mine. Fuetin. Kuki Pareto no Jutsu, wind release. Air pellet." He pulled out a wind pellet from his pocket and tossed it to Anko. She caught it and looked at it curiously. Namikaze said, "I created them before going on missions, compressing an incredible amount of wind chakra into such a small package. Finally I coat the wind chakra pellet with a small amount of normal chakra and crystallized it. I use them often when in the field against overly powerful enemies. They have a variety of purposes. Now, where did that Iowa merchant go?" Several seconds later, the smoke cleared, revealing a massive trench cutting about 10 feet into the earth by an area of 100 feet squared. However, the cloud ninja pulled himself to his feet in the dead center of the attack. His shirt was completely blown away, revealing his upper body to be completely unscathed. Heh. Wow, that was one hell of a jutsu. I would have died for certain if it wasn't what made me the rock fist of Iowa. He threw himself to the rocks and ran towards Namikaze. The Konoha Jounin withdrew a second pellet and threw it. This time, the third rock wall disintegrated under the wind technique, but Shiro kept moving forward. He smiled maniacally, "What happens when the unmovable rock meets the breakable wind? I keep coming, ka ha 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 ka." He threw a punch at the male ninja, but his fist hit the stone outcropping as Namikaze dodged. His hand punched straight through the wall deep into the stone outcropping. Namikaze saw this from the ground after using Kei's Shunpo to escape along with Anko. Naruto thought so. Kakuzo's technique which countered Chouji's. But we don't have any lightning jutsu. The man said, Anko, we're gonna need to think up a plan. Let's retreat a bit and get him to chase us. Anko nodded and they began moving backwards towards the forest. Shiro shouted, Doten. Yanhu Iwaseru, Earth Release. 4 sides rock cell. 4 rock walls burst from the ground and captured the 2 shinobi. It rose about 10 feet into the air. To complete the kill, the missing nin switched his final hand sign to Rad and said, Iwa Furugasen Kugi. Rock floor spike, Namikaze grabbed Anko and jumped to the wall. Several small spikes burst from the ground inside the rock cell and attempted to pierce the pair of ninjas. However, Namikaze was too fast as he got out of the cell before the attack hit. Shiro gave chase to the pair as they fled into the forest, intent on taking their lives. As the trees become more thick, it became harder and harder to track the 2 ninja and thought about turning around. Finally, Namikaze and Anko stopped and turned. They were both smiling. Shiro landed on a branch and said, What are you two so happy about? I don't really care if you've prepared this battlefield in honor of me, as I'll crush whatever you throw at me. 4 Naruto shadow clones came out of the forest with their short katanas drawn. The missing ninja dropped into a fighting stance and said, Come, if you wish. All 4 used K's shunpo and slammed their katanas into the cloud ninja. Shiro smirked, Have you forgotten, those don't work on me. He slammed his feet into the one behind him and spun kicked the rest. They all exploded into smoke. However, 2 of them were carrying air pellets, which detonated at the death of their controllers. 2 waves of chakra crushed in on the man, which also blinded him with the white light of wind chakra. When the dust and chakra cleared, he mocked them in his head, but then several kunai slammed into his backside. The man turned, only to see the real Namikaze right in front of him running at him. The ninja swung his fist and opened his mouth to taunt the man, but it turned out to be his undoing. Namikaze ducked the punch and hurtled something green into the missing ninja's mouth. Shiro accidentally swallowed it. Namikaze exploded into smoke as he used the replacement jutsu to get out of range. The missing nin didn't have time to understand what was happening as the air seed exploded in his throat. Namikaze landed on the branch and watched as the missing ninja vaporized spectacularly, sending rocks and the ninja's remains in all directions. He said, Doten. Domu no Jutsu, Rarth Release. Earth Spear, I heard about an enemy ninja who used the technique. However, it only hardens the skin. On the inside, you're just as soft as all the rest. Goodbye, Shiro Dakano, strong fist of the hidden cloud. Elsewhere, the merchant watched with some interest as Namikaze and Anko obliterated the strong fist of Kuma. His henge exploded, revealing a jonin scout who chuckled, Heh, this might prove to be interesting news for the Tsuchikage. May we meet in the future, Kano has yellow flash. 1. Namikaze and Anko recovered the remains of Shiro, which was pretty much his head and sealed it into a scroll. They deposited the remains with the old man and went along their way. Anko sent off the bird to the Hokage, saying their target was dead and their mission was a success. She had to say, the plan was brilliant, cunning once again like her old master. He started out with 5 air seeds and used 2 to keep the target at bay. Then, he led the enemy into the forest where he created 4 shadow clones to assault the ninja. 2 of the shadow clones held air pellets, which would exploded the moment they died. The pellet sealed the target within a sphere of wind which should have obliterated the target, but the opponent used an earth jutsu to keep from being injured by external attacks. After the windstorm cleared, Namikaze moved in and threw the seat into the target's open mouth. Namikaze used the replacement jutsu to back away, while the target was torn apart from the inside out. He was literally dead before he knew what had happened. Then, Anko remembered she owed him several drinks for saving her. She said, now that we've finished. What do you say we have a night on the town? Namikaze's smile was as large as ever as he dropped the anbu Captain Fasadi War, yeah. Namikaze's troubles Amik. A night on the town. 12 hours later in the Hokage's office. 12 damaged chairs, 11,000 Ryu.4 destroyed tables, 29,000 Ryu.1 destroyed stand, 50,000 Ryu.5 civilian hospital bills, 30,000 Ryu.2 cases of sake, 4 cases of rice wine, 1 case of Sachiro, and a case of an expensive foreign import, 80,000 Ryu. Sarutobi sighed and looked at the 2 ninja who fidgeted. He said, so, who wants to explain this bill? Naruto Namikaze said, look. No one died. We wanted to have some fun before returning to the village, so we went to a highly recommended drinking stand near the Iowa border. After about 2 bottles of sake, we were pretty strung up. I think Anko got the idea Orochimaru was in the bar for some weird reason and threw several kunai in all directions. I tried to stop her, but instead she turned on me. The next thing I remember, we're waking up in a nearby forest. I guess we accidentally destroyed the stand because as we approached, a mob started chasing us out of town. Sarutobi rested his chin on his entwined hands and closed his eyes. I never should have put those 2 together. I'll never have any peace now. He looked at Anko, who was just silent. The Hokage said, alright. I'm attaching your 200,000 Ryu voucher as compensation for the damages you two caused. Furthermore, both of you will be refused missions for a week to give you time to think about this." Namikaze nodded his head and walked towards the door with Anko. At the door, Sarutobi said, "Before you two go, I'd like to say you both did good on the mission. You will receive your shares of the bounty in a couple days." The two walked out. Namikaze sighed and said, "Thanks for covering for my mistake. Sarutobi would have locked me away if he knew that I was the one who was drinking, threatening people and causing a general riot through the town." Anko waved it off, "No problem. To be honest, it's happened to me a couple times when I started. However, we're even for you saving my life those 2 times." Namikaze smiled and said, "Right. Well, I'm off for a bit. See ya." He walked away from the snake Kunoichi towards the Konoha Memorial Stone. What if Naruto Namikaze Anbu Captain Council bashing? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.